A long time ago, in probably like an office building somewhere. If I could get away with using the opening theme without fear of copyright, I feel like this intro would have worked out better. Anyways, so BioWare creates Knights of the Old Republic, and people clap about it. Big applause, everyone's cheering. Immediately after, LucasArts goes, "Hey guys, how about more of that?" And BioWare said, "Nah, you're not giving us enough time. We're gonna go make Jade Empire now. Why don't you go ask Obsidian? They make neat games and love working with short time windows." I know this sounds like I'm being sarcastic, but this is pretty much what happened. Imagine this happening nowadays though. "Hey id Software, we want you to make another Doom game." "Nah, we're gonna work on a new IP. Why don't you give it to Arcane Studios?" And so Knights of the Old Republic 2 was born after a 14-month development cycle, proving that Obsidian will forever be doomed to make great games only when under a tight time crunch. Of course, this led to a lot of content being cut, as is tradition, but through the power of modding, the game can be restored to the way that it was meant to be. Unless you have it on anything besides PC, then you're pretty much hooped. So Obsidian comes in, and Chris Avellone decides that a lot of story elements in Knights of the Old Republic are dumb as hell, so he sets out to make his own Star War, intending to make it a lot more realistic in his eyes. We're talking a day-night cycle. We're talking a fully integrated weather system. We're talking over 1,000 NPCs which all have their own schedules and react differently to 4 different clothing styles that you can wear. But it wasn't meant to be, and the rushed time frame meant that KOTOR 2 had to be put out a lot earlier than was expected. But what we did get instead was the second game in the Old Republic saga, which has understandably polarized fans one way or the other as to which of the 2 original games is the better entry, but most of them seem to say that it was 2. I personally have never played the second game until this video, so this is going to be an interesting experience after I criticized a lot of the first game's finer points. So to lend a tiny amount of structure to this video, I'll note here that this isn't going to be something where I dissect every tiny detail and break down the video into parts, despite how long it is. I'll more or less be sticking to my normal formula where I play through the game as it's presented and point out what I enjoy and what I think could have been done better. I did download the aforementioned content restoration mod that many people have recommended that I use, along with a very small amount of graphical mods which I'll list in the description of the video. And finally, I want to note a couple of things ahead of time. 1, there's going to be an Audible sponsor partway through this thing. Try not to be alarmed. 2, I got a limited time shirt and sticker thing for this video if you feel adventurous enough to buy one before they expire. And 3, I stream on Twitch. I know I usually say that at the end, but this thing's long as hell. Hold it together, buddy, come on, power through those graphics. As with the first game, the character creation is almost identical. I'm not going to get too much into the actual logistics since I covered most of how it works in my previous video, but I will say that I'm going to rock a Sentinel for this playthrough as opposed to the Guardian that I rolled with last time. Basically, this means that instead of having stuff like Force Jump and a higher HP pool, I'm gonna have immunity to more control effects naturally in exchange for a relatively balanced HP and FP pool. It's also worth noting that your gender actually plays a pretty sizable role in this game. Not only is one of your companions you can get different depending on if you're male or female, but your relationship between your various party members is affected as well. Additionally, there are some different plot elements depending on your gender. Canonically, a light side female is the correct choice here, but personally I'm going to choose a male for this run and cover the story from that perspective. I'm not entirely sure how I feel about these differences, but I do have to say that it lends a lot more replayability than the typical light side run versus dark side run. So with my guy being the balanced class, I figured that I'd stick with a pretty balanced build that drops the ball on dexterity and intelligence. My reasoning here for docking these 2 over the rest isn't as much about them being useless as the others being more useful in my eyes. The skill section on the other hand is about the same as last time, as are the feats. I will say that last time I went immediately for dual wielding, which was a gigantic mistake. So this time I'm gonna start with toughness and then ease my way into dual wielding. Honestly, at first I was going to actually go through every single skill that I picked, but yeah, you can kind of see what's going on here, I think. Any questions? Yeah, me too.
The Ebon Hawk is adrift in space. You lie in the medical room in critical condition. The hyperdrive is damaged.
So this big scrolling text basically tells us that even though everyone was clapping and cheering at the end of the first game, the Sith continued their warpath on the Jedi, extinguishing almost every single Jedi in the known galaxy. Great job, everyone. Anyways, you happen to be one of the last known Jedi, and together with your friends you must save the galaxy again, but this time for real. Or be evil, that's definitely an option here. I'm honestly very tempted to go Sith in this playthrough, but I feel like canonically these things are always set up for the light side to win. Were I to play the game again, you can bet your ass that I would go dark, but we'll see if I'm persuaded to do so in my first run or not. So it's been 5 years, shit's worse than ever, and the Ebon Hawk is beat to hell and floating around near the planet of Peragus. The tutorial has us on the same ship I became so familiar with in the first game, making navigating around it with our robot buddy pretty easy. It's a more lenient tutorial by far than the first game, allowing you to practice every main system the game has to offer pretty efficiently, from picking locks to hacking computers, treating others with first aid, looting bodies and containers, talking to others, defusing mines, and engaging in rudimentary combat against practice drones. The entire thing is tour guided by the digital dungeon master in the form of the ship's AI, which spells out everything that's happening around you in fine detail. I enjoy how quick the whole thing is, and it serves its purpose well as a refresher course on how to play Knights of the Old Republic. So the ship lands on Peragus, and Goku gets carted off into the patented Frieza Force medicine machine, where a voice tells him to wake the fuck up, samurai. Then we get to watch our boy's cheeks clap around the base for a bit while he gathers his bearings. This has us learning about a new mechanic exclusive to this game in which I can use my skills to create and break down mines, grenades, stimulants, and med packs. Later on, I can also craft armor upgrades, weapon upgrades, pretty much everything you can think of, besides actual armor and weapons. Initially, I did not care about this, which was great news seeing as I had 0 points in a few of the required skills. The more interesting part of all of this is the fact that the medical logs here reveal that there's an unusual amount of droid malfunctions and mineshaft explosions as of late, including an explosion that seems to have killed or at least hurt the lady recording the logs. But the most interesting part here is that there were 5 people being treated in these tubes for various explosion-related incidents, one of which was me. And someone came in and injected a lethal dose of painkiller to all 5 tubes. Fortunately, our guy is a veritable buffet of ass cheeks and Jedi plot armor, so he didn't die. But someone's definitely working against us. Probably the Sith, but I'm no writer. So eventually the old bat who was found dead on my ship is found dead in the morgue too. But my guy doesn't run up and check for a pulse or anything, so he just kind of eyeballs her before going,
"She's fucking dead."
Well, she rises from her slumber as I'm done looting a torch off another body in here before mysteriously recapping everything I just told you before this. Her name is Kreia, and the coolest part about her is that she looks like one of those old former Firekeeper ladies from Dark Souls, but before Dark Souls. I guess those ladies look like her. Huh. She seems wise to the Force, being the one who awakened you and systematically begins analyzing who you are, teasing out bits of information where you get the option to tell her that you and the Jedi Order had a falling out. I like these little barbs of information over a big reveal, but you being Revan in the first game is going to be a hard twist to top regardless of its predictability. Imagine if Obsidian just had the balls to make it so that you were Revan again, and you just lost your memory for a second time. Anyways, I finally get to start playing, and it's basically the same gameplay as the first game. You have to understand, the second entry was developed on the same engine as the first, and released a whopping 17 months afterwards. This also means that a lot of the clunkiness that boomers got angry with me for critiquing before is still here, and the combat is still worse than Ocarina of Time in my opinion. Also, I couldn't move until I saved and reloaded after aggressively ticking the VSync box back and forth, so that's great. But eventually the game does let me move again, and I continue picking at random angry droids with my fake lightsaber. I still can't move every time I get out of combat. People say this is from attempting to run the game at anything above 60 FPS, which is why fucking around with VSync fixes it for most people. I was running the game at 165Hz because I wanted to feel as immersed as possible with my high-level gaming monitor for gamers only. Fortunately, relaunching the game at 85Hz or less fixes the issue. Although crunching the numbers through a couple of different calculators reveals that this is a staggering 80Hz less than before. And just knowing this makes me feel less like a Jedi and more like a guy talking about a Jedi in a video. Anyways, this old lady keeps barging into my thoughts mid-combat and guiding me on her wacky droid adventure, teaching me how to sense life forms and become a Force user again through my apparently decade-long hiatus. There's only one person who can explain anything that's happening here. Exposition Man! That's right, Exposition Man is here to clarify all of the questions that we've had until now. What happened after Revan united the Jedi on Korriban? Nothing. How many Jedi are left in the universe? A handful, maybe. What happened here? A bounty was placed on every known Jedi by the Exchange. This bounty enticed half of the miners here to try to turn you in, but the commanders decided that that's no good. So yeah, basically a civil war type thing broke out between a chunk of the overseers and the miners over whether to turn you in or not to the Exchange. Thanks, exposition man. So after freeing him and figuring out that someone not only tried to sabotage the robots, cut off outside communications, lock the base down, and poison the watering hole, we now get to be this dumb little robot again. Riveting. Alright, so this whole section is boring as hell, but at the end of it we do get insight into how the Ebon Hawk was repaired by the droids here, and how the ship's data is unable to be accessed without recognizing a particular voice. The guy who's recording these logs is like, the only reason someone would lock their ship down like this is if they were smugglers. They probably didn't want people to see where they've been, or where they're going. Or maybe they just liked privacy. I don't know. Doesn't that seem like an obvious possibility? Or are we jumping at conclusions just to make the player question our character's background some more? Alright, so that guy's dead, but he did open the hatch so that I can play on my main guy again. I really dislike this extended tutorial. I mean, I get it, but shit, it's really boring. The initial intrigue has almost completely worn off. And now my guy has to go to the mines to fight more droids, which hopefully finds us a way off this rock, and it's just... I don't know. I guess I was just more excited about this game's tutorial island, but so far it seems like an even worse terrace. So we run through the mines, open an exit, and get greeted by Exposition Droid! Yeah, it's the same exact stuff that we knew already, except with the addendum of how I got here. Apparently, I was on board a larger vessel called the Harbinger, which subsequently suffered a catastrophic failure before the Ebon Hawk was discovered and brought on board, which then suffered its own catastrophe before landing here on Peragus, or something like that. This HK unit is obviously very alike to HK-47 from the first game in the way that he speaks and how he coats a lot of his messages with underlying sarcasm and veiled threats. This means that we love him and that he's a great character. Though I do have to admit that his existence kind of takes away from HK-47's uniqueness in the first game, as he always stood out in my mind as one of a kind. Also, I'm pretty sure he's the one who's been trying to kidnap me away since he keeps referring to me as his bounty. The more important lore bit here is that the HK unit basically told the miners that you were a Jedi, as he figured out from running your face through various databases, claiming that you actually served with Revan in the Mandalorian Wars a few years back. That's a pretty staunch difference between the character reveal of these two games if that's true, but I really don't mind it either. Not everything needs to be a huge twist. Whereas the player might have been wondering how being an asshole for the sake of being an asshole might not make any sense in the first game's very obvious light side path before the big reveal, this game gives you a potential reason almost immediately to return to the dark side. Though it is worth noting that when Revan was fighting in the Mandalorian Wars, he was still fighting for the Jedi. So really, this story could go either way with my path to either purity or corruption. Eventually, we get to a stage where I can offer to try to save the remaining miners who trapped themselves in an area where the ventilation is starting to or currently spewing toxic fumes. I'm being a good boy because, yeah, right, I just like to be good in games. At least the first time around. I just feel like it makes being an asshole the second time around much more interesting because you know how things are supposed to go, and now you're seeing the other side of the coin. After this, I figured out that the workbenches are a little more complex than I initially gave them credit for and started to realize the possibilities that they had. The workbenches in this game are pretty goddamn great. I actually really enjoy it as a mechanic, and throughout my adventure I wind up upgrading a lot of stuff almost constantly whenever I can. I just don't know if it was presented in the best way at the beginning, because at first I was like, man, I just keep grabbing these parts and components and all this stuff, and I don't care. But after a while I realized the sheer amount of stuff that I could use it for, which is awesome. Plus you can mulch pretty much anything that you come across into more components, including stuff like datapads. Anyways, I gotta get through the airlock to infiltrate the area where the miners have holed themselves up, which means spacewalking. You remember how slow and ridiculous this was in the last game? Well, the devs at Obsidian thought the exact same thing because this is what this shit looks like now. Hell yeah, that's much better. And 100% more ridiculous looking. I love it. So after I get out of here, I tell this dummy to look out the window, and he notes that someone very recently set the explosive gas to leak outside of the facility directly to where I'm at now. Which means that either someone we haven't met yet is working against me, or one of these three are. I think I have a pretty good guess as to who it might be. But because that isn't enough, we get an additional monkey wrench thrown into the mix in the form of this ship coming, one that apparently houses this guy. Well, if that's not an intimidating introduction, I don't know what is. The following cutscene which plays is super unnecessary. Like, it's a minute straight of me looking at this new ship. It played for so long that I thought I needed to move during it or something. But eventually, I do finally gain control of my character again.
He has come.
Alright, now I finally gain control. Fucking weird. So I plow on through more droids before getting to a minor area where everyone has biffed it to poison gas. It's here that we collect logs and meet my favorite character in the entire KOTOR franchise, man who gets cut off at every sentence.
3, 17, 13, then the next two numbers are...
Sir, couldn't we contact the medbay?
If I ever catch up with that Mandalorian-loving son of a... At least the air scrubbers are still working, even though they're tied into the... Hey, what's happening to the ventilation system?
So yeah, apparently the rebel miners led by one Korta are the people working against me throughout this whole thing, and this place sucks. The story isn't particularly riveting. The key miners leave little data logs telling me exactly what to look for, even if it makes no sense. Like the guy who was smuggling shit made a data pad telling anyone who found it where to find his stash. There are droids in almost every single room that aren't particularly fun to fight. The battle music is this repeating 15-second loop of annoying brass instruments that doesn't know what to do with itself after I defeat an enemy. The most interesting part of this area is this gray guy who landed and didn't come out of his ship. And he probably won't until we try to leave. I have no interest in doing anything because I haven't been given anything to do besides leave this place. It's just a really shitty introduction to the game. And I can't help but wonder how many people pick this game up only to get bored with it during the first hour or two. Eventually, I do make it to another recording, showing Korta and his crew trying to hoof it out of here before reactivating all of the droids to attack the rest of the miners. But something went awry and some of the droids pop in to give Korta and his squad the old Al Capone maneuver before mocking them and letting the security camera system know that they'd reversed the door code to prevent escape. The way that these droids talk remind me heavily of HK, which, kind of leads to this whole theory that HK is the one that's trying to capture and or kill me. But I'm sure we'll find out soon. As harrowing as this starting area has been, I did enjoy the logic puzzle here, which is a continuation from the first game's interesting puzzles. Basically, you know the first three numbers from the guy who kept getting cut off mid-sentence. Looking at the logs that we got earlier, which show a bunch of ellipses, X's, and dashes, we can determine that ... is 3, -X is 17, and -... is 13. This means that an ellipse is 1, an X is 5, and a dash is 10. So the last two entries are 5 and 7. Then we reverse the sequence since the droids did that earlier instead of just setting a new code for some reason. Regardless, I did enjoy this puzzle. After I get past the turbo lift, I meet up with Kreia, who finally joins my party. An interesting thing to note here is that I expected her to be leaning more towards the light side, but she seems to be right in the middle, or almost a little more dark side oriented from what I can tell. She even has one or two dark side powers at her disposal in addition to light. I found that surprising, but ultimately pretty cool. So guess who's been helping to kill all of the miners? Yep, exposition droid. I know not everything needs to be a heavy plot twist, but this seemed like a lot of running around to figure out almost nothing. At least he fills us in a little more about the main character's background here. Apparently our guy has been on the run, evading the Jedi Order for years now since the Mandalorian Wars, in which he apparently was exiled from the Order. After booking passage on the Harbinger, which this HK unit was already on, the droid sabotaged the ship right as the Ebon Hawk was discovered. Then I assume the HK unit jumped from the Harbinger to the Ebon Hawk, all because he had orders to kidnap the last remaining Jedi for his rich master's collection. I'm just glad we're finally getting somewhere with this plot, honestly. So after taking out HK50, we try to get out of here. This is where the game introduces something that really sets it apart from its predecessor, the companion influence system. Basically, the game's dialogue still tends to stick to 3 options ranging from, "I'm a good guy, let's save everyone," to, "Why yes, that is indeed a plan, maybe a good one but possibly bad," to, "If you so much as move your lips to tell me anything other than yes sir, I'll see if your body glows in the dark with a lightsaber jammed into it." But then there's more companion-specific dialogue which affects how much your companions are willing to follow you and respect you. So you can tell Kreia that she's a dumb old lady, or you can apologize respectfully when she asks you why you're standing around and not saying anything. And every companion respects a different type of response. So HK, for example, would obviously enjoy it if I were more cruel towards the idea of the miners dying, or more of Kreia's dialogue choices might unlock if I have a minimum influence with her rather than a maximum. But moreover, the more a companion respects you, the more their alignment will shift towards your own. I really like this concept, and it really makes me feel like I'd be able to play through as an evil Sith Lord and still be able to fully enjoy the company of the people with me, unlike the first game where you wind up having to kill off or drive off many of your companions in order to walk down the dark side.
Sir, I just picked up an unusual sound from MedLab.
What the hell was that? It sounded like a bunch of stock sound effects. I don't think this was supposed to be a funny scene, but Christ it was. So the final pieces of the puzzle are falling into place here, as it's revealed that these idiots were ferrying the main character on the Harbinger to a planet called Telos, when they received a report about the Ebon Hawk being attacked by a Sith warship. The Harbinger went to investigate and found nothing except for the body of this gray guy on the Sith warship. So they took his body to the medical area and looked around for other signs of life on the ship, and found no one because apparently all of these Sith assassins were cloaked. We're talking like 30 cloaked dudes or something who managed to hop from the warship to the Harbinger. Eventually, the gray guy wakes up and joins the assassins to kill all of the Republic officers, and then proceeds to take control of the ship. There was also a point during all of this where HK50 knocked out the main character by drugging him, based off of the datapad that I found in what used to be the main character's room and the logs in the medical area. Then HK hit our guy away before Kreia rescued him and attempted to escape on the Ebon Hawk while the Sith ship fired at them, and the HK unit managed to Terminator his way onto the ship in pursuit. I believe that clarifies most of the events here. The gray guy is still a bit of a mystery though, as one of the logs tells us that his body is a mass of wounds, his skeleton having thousands of fractures. Honestly, I don't know who or what he is, but it's a really cool design for a villain. Speaking of, looks like the guy finally caught up to us.
He cannot kill what he cannot see.
What the hell are you talking about? Well, that's a familiar sight. At least old Milky Eyes decided to do this before I get a chance to fight Big Gray instead of what happened with Malik in the first game. You know, I really would have loved to have been able to fuck this up by running back into the room with those two. Like just before this, Exposition Man tells me that he has a bad feeling about what's to come, and the game literally tells me, hey, you should probably save. So Exposition Man is now Divination Man. But then you just carry on as Kreia has to fight Greya. Like I would have loved to have been able to run back in and get myself killed or something. But yeah, Divination Man and I run off to escape as Kreia takes on her former student. Oh yeah, he's her former student. Says so himself. They chat a bit before Big Gray chops off her hand, which looks about as impressive as Ben Kenobi's death. I feel like I've said that before. Oh well, the technology for big cutscenes just wasn't there yet. Well, apparently my character is linked to Kreia because he feels the pain of her hand being lopped off, continuing the trend of your character being linked to some other character in these games. So now it's, why am I still on fucking Peragus? I've recorded about 4 hours of footage and I'm still here. I get that I explored every nook and cranny. I get that I've been looting and going through every dialogue option and solving puzzles I haven't seen before, but like, this is just the beginning. This is a harrowing nightmare of a beginning. I'm fighting droids again because I have to escape. I mean, I guess I could just run by them, but I want the XP. Why did you build the start of your game this way? Again, Terrace had depth. It had different parts to it. A club, an undercity, the various levels where civilians and gang members occupied. There were things to do, people to meet. I've met a whopping 5 or so characters and fought so many droids that I'm level 7 now. Level 7. I don't know if that's a lot in this game, but it fucking feels like it. So let me run this one by you.
Not with all these asteroids around us. We'd enter hyperspace in pieces. Hold on! This is gonna get a little rocky.
If I wasn't making this video, I'd have uninstalled this game. Seriously though, I know that standards weren't as high back then, but this is a crippling blow to this game. They easily could have cut this entire first part down by half and it still would have been slightly too long. And then they toss 50 uncloaked run-of-the-mill Sith troopers at you like they were just there hanging out on Peragus or the Harbinger and nobody noticed them. It's literally a turret section for the sake of a turret section. Oh, and then Kreia just phases onto the Ebon Hawk as you're escaping. Hell yeah. So after the devs are done hamstringing this game and letting us escape into hyperspace on the way to Telos, we finally get a few more crumbs from the sandwich of the story. So apparently through a string of coincidences that the Force always brings with it, Kreia happened to discover that you were aboard the Harbinger and tried to rescue you by firing up the Ebon Hawk. And then she was knocked out when the Sith attacked as she was making the jump to hyperspace. So then she goes on to explain that you are the last known Jedi, and that your existence is what causes the Sith to hunt you. I don't know what this makes her, but apparently she's just a Force user or something. Then she complains about being handless and invites you to talk where Divination Man isn't. Well, DM continues to be a roguish type who can read people super well and suggests that I go check in on her, stating that she was barely holding back the pain from her hand being butchered. Alright, so here's the deal. The old woman and I have some kind of bond, as I mentioned before. She has no idea why it exists, so either she's lying or she hasn't figured out what caused it yet like Bastila in the first game. Secondly, Kreia lets me know that she believes that the Jedi Order were the ones who cut me off from the Force, making me more or less a normal dude again for a while. She doesn't know why, but my character believed that he lost his attunement to the Force when he served Revan in the Mandalorian Wars. Kreia notes that serving someone who was as corrupt as Revan probably would have strengthened my bond to the Force, not weakened it. This is part of why she believes that it was the Order who forcibly cut me off from it. Thirdly, no one knows what happened to Revan after the events of the first game. The canon storyline was that he returned to the fold of the Jedi Order and defeated Malak, as I did in my playthrough, but afterwards he accomplished little more for the Order or the Republic. And finally, the biggest thing to note here is the behavioral difference of the Sith from the first game to this game. In the first game, the Sith were ever present in daily activities on planets. They were always in your face, some kind of ever-evil dark side power, constantly threatening the galaxy with evil acts. In this game, they've been toned down significantly, supposedly. Kreia says that they're now less about being overt and overzealous and are instead about being a finely tuned machine with a single goal in mind: to assassinate every Jedi in the known galaxy. This means that they've been more trained in assassination rather than over-the-top destruction. If I'm reading this correctly, I really like this change. The issue with the Sith in the last game is how ridiculously evil they were for the sake of being evil. A lot of the times their ends were to be as cruel as possible rather than accomplishing a victory. Of course, the victory was still important, but a lot of the time if someone could be treated harshly, they would do it without question, much like Darth Brandon or whatever the hell his dumbass name was in the first game. Dude would just come in and start throwing his own men around and start destroying consoles on the flagship just to show how much of a dick he was. The Sith in this game are immediately shown to be more ruthless and cunning, and I really hope this is the case, honestly. Because truth be told, after the constant hammering of Republic planets, there really isn't any further need to annihilate at every given opportunity. Kreia continues to elaborate here, explaining that the goal of the Sith isn't to defeat the Republic, but to defeat the Jedi. She brings up one of the main lessons of the first game, that the Republic has been a stagnant and unmoving force for a very long time, that they haven't advanced or grown as a people, and that the Jedi have been the reason they've continued to be able to sustain themselves despite the lack of advancement. I really like the tone of this game from the former one. It's a lot darker and a lot more realistic in a way. While the previous game hinted at the idea of some of the flaws of the Jedi and the Republic, they were still always the good guys, the ones that were meant to succeed and overcome. In this game, they're painted in a lot more flawed light. Kreia isn't here to lecture me and turn me back towards the light and become the chosen Jedi to unite the galaxy against the Sith. She's simply here to bring me back to power, to let me choose my path while helping me to succeed at it. She paints the Jedi Order and by extension the Republic as a very fractured, very idealistic group of people. She paints the Sith as a well-oiled machine of crushing hatred. Yet she doesn't drive me towards one side or the other. I don't know why yet, but I do appreciate it a lot more than listening to Bastila's ever-present ranting and raving about the darkness in our hearts. Alright, back to Exposition Man to talk to him about the course that we're on to Telos. I know I haven't used his name yet, but I find him really uninteresting, at least for now. A-ONE is a roguish type who hates getting along and only seems to care about himself. He's like Karth's opposite side. He hates talking about himself, he's always looking for a way out, and he hates Kreia for treating him like a fool, as does Kreia hate him for being a fool.
Oh, no. Look, I respect your privacy. I mean, when have I ever asked you any questions? I mean, besides that one. So, what happened? Don't give me that. There were plenty of times back on Peragus where a lightsaber would have been helpful. So where's yours?
Yeah, that just about sums his character up. So we fly into Telos and immediately get placed under house arrest for potentially being the cause of the explosion on Peragus. Fun.
You will be held briefly in the TSF station until living quarters can be arranged.
I finally made it into a video game, boys. 13 years before I started my channel. So we get locked up and a dude comes in to try to assassinate us, claiming to be an expert bounty hunter of the highest caliber.
More where that came from.
The security cameras up. What?
After this, Telos security comes barreling in to act like they're not completely inept. I have to say, compared to the previous game's dialogue, the options that I have here are leagues ahead. Like, you know how I complained about most of the options being good, neutral, or evil? In this one, we get the sarcastic option, except it doesn't suck ass like it does in Fallout 4. The dialogue options don't feel evil, they just feel like I actually feel, that these guys are stunted morons disguised as a security force. But unfortunately, as much as I just applauded the writers and got my writing trophy ready to be shipped out to Obsidian, the sarcastic options have literally as much impact as they do in Fallout 4. Basically, if I pick them, the exact same dialogue plays out, though sometimes they skip some of the niceties which the more civil options garner. I know a lot of these options are just here to make me feel like I can slip better into the main character's shoes, but I've always disliked it when there very obviously wasn't any extra effort put into rewarding the player for choosing those options. Looks like I'll be keeping that writing trophy after all. Alright, so we've gotten to the phone call part of the game. It's the part of the game where I take phone calls. The first phone call brings about a visitor who tells me that Space Walmart is back and more evil than ever. This time they're buying out and gaining access to all of the planet's restoration contracts, and are using them to fuck up the planet even more than when it got fucked in the Jedi Civil War. Old Slugbug here wants me to speak to his leader who just wants to help restore the planet. In exchange for my help, the priest will attempt to restore my force powers fully to me, since apparently that's just something he can do. Alright, next call. Next we have this lady. She's the evil option here, and represents Zerka, basically saying that she doesn't understand what restoring nature even means, and that it's gonna cost too much money to do something so silly. You know that there's definitely a middle ground here, but I'm guessing that we're not gonna get a third caller to tell me that we can restore nature while also building residential and tourist areas. Oh well, back to bed for the third time. So after a brief interim, the station's elite protection squad comes back to tell us that we've been all cleared, but that we have to wait on the station for another Republic ship to pop by in a few days for some reason. I mean, they just cleared us, but yeah, sure. Not like I didn't want to explore this place anyways. A-ONE explains that Telos is fucked no matter what, since Peragus was the only place keeping the Citadel here fueled. So I don't know how much we're going to be able to accomplish with the whole hippies versus Space Walmart case, but we'll give it a go. So I head out into this sprawling corridor of rooms. I believe they typically call these hallways, but I digress. Snooping around has me finding most of these rooms empty. The ones that do have people in them consist of a droid part seller, a guy who lost the love of his life when he put her up for collateral during a game of space blackjack, and a guy who doesn't want me to steal from him for some reason. That last one, oddly enough, just lets me leave after looting the joint, so cool I guess. So I carry on, eventually finding my way to the hippies. So the first thing that these guys want me to do is escort a droid that they bought, my favorite. So I leave as quickly as I came and I wind up exploring a bunch more. There's a cantina with all of your usual suspects hanging around it. This is the worst song I've ever heard in a video game. There's also swoop races! There's jumping now! And mines! But that's it. No spectacular background story or whatever, just hey, here's the top time. Oh, you beat it? Neat. Here's 500 credits. I have never been more thrilled to win. But that's about it for the cantina besides Pazak, which, that's all there is to the cantina. There's a couple of shops to buy things at, there's a medical area with absolutely no one in it, and there are some side characters who all chat every here and there about various events happening around the Citadel and the galaxy, which is a nice touch, but the place is actually starting to feel a lot more like a Terrace 2 at this stage. Actually, most of this place feels really unfinished with how empty these big-ass halls seem to be. Well, we go to escort the droid back, and surprise, here comes a bunch of exchange thugs who have been hired by Zerka to do their dirty work. I still have no weapons, but that doesn't seem to matter as the other two in my party beat cheeks while I cast buffs. I don't even think I needed to cast the buffs, to be honest. But either way, the game surprisingly doesn't make me escort the droid back manually through waves of thugs, and instead instantly puts me back at the hippies part of the Citadel. So I think I did this in the wrong order. I know I was told to go get my ship whenever, but I kinda just explored instead. And after completing this quest, Kreia goes, "Yeah, we shouldn't trust those dudes, but they could help us get our ship back." What? Can't we just go get it from the docks?
I regret to inform you that the Ebon Hawk is gone. The TSF believes it was stolen and is currently investigating.
Yeah, that sounds about right. So this YouTube channel continues to share the initials of the most incompetent security force in a video game, which makes sense, as I now have to go deal with the exchange to discover the whereabouts of my ship. What I don't understand is that, I guess maybe I'm missing some background information here, but the Telos security is affiliated with the Republic, right? And the exchange is a seedy, dubious group of criminals, which the security droid here actually tells you. Why are they allowed to set up in the open? Like, Zerka makes sense in that they might be complete assholes, but they still tend to do things legally on paper. They don't always play by the rules, but they're just a mega corporation, and it makes sense for them to legally be able to set up here. Why the exchange though? Like, this protocol droid goes, "Yeah, they're a bunch of criminals, and they probably stole your ship. They came here to get a foothold on this planet while it's undergoing restoration." What? Our job to get rid of them? No. I mean, yes, but no. No, not really. Anyways, your shit's in those lockers over there. What a silly setting for this planet.
This confirms my fear that there is a source of black market weapons and components here on the station.
No, really? Wow, I'd have never guessed that. Do you think that maybe, just maybe, it could be from the literal criminal organization which has set up shop here? No, that would be outrageous. These weapons could be coming from anywhere. So I start asking around about this gun and wind up talking to a lady who's pretty high up in this branch of the exchange. She wants to overthrow her boss so that she can become the new boss, and promises to help me get my ship back in exchange for killing her boss. With as forthcoming as she's been about the information here, and how easily she'll let me just walk through the exchange, I'm willing to guess that I'm gonna get a knife in the back after she uses me. But I can tell you this much for sure. There is no way that this boss doesn't try to talk me into helping out his side instead, and killing her off in exchange for his favor. Oh Jesus, what a twist. Anyways, so the boss dies and oh geez.
Slusk's dead, but Godo's still my boss. I'm shipping you to Nar Shaddaa, Jedi. Dead or alive.
Oh gosh. Wow, I just can't. Anyway, she's dead too. You know, I think the amount of people telling me how great this game is was not a good thing for the first chunk of it, because the writing here is subpar at best. I'm actually baffled that I got shoehorned into all of my dialogue options being along the lines of, "Alright, now the exchange has to leave the Citadel or else." I mean, yeah, I expected that I would have to kill her also, but I assumed it would be more of her saying something along the lines of, "Okay, thanks for doing my dirty work, now die." And not all three of my dialogue options being something that provokes her. But whatever. I have now done what the security forces here could never do in a matter of about, 30 minutes. Good work, guys. Now it's time to carry out the remainder of their workload by exposing Zerka for the corrupt assholes they are, which, that shouldn't be too hard, all things considered. In fact, it's as easy as talking to a guy in the cantina, talking to a guy out of the cantina, and then talking to a droid inside of the Zerka base. Don't get me wrong, I'm actually glad that this is as simple as it is, because this place sucks. This planet sucks. The introduction to this game sucks. My god, what a way to immediately turn your players off to a game that was so anticipated. Nothing about this area is interesting. I mean, at least Peragus had a very eerie sensation to it, a shroud of mystery in an almost whodunit kind of way. It just lasted for way too long. This place is just, dude, where's my car? And it's almost like the writers knew how shitty this area was, because they took the exact opposite philosophy of Peragus, where you constantly had to fight droids at every given moment, and instead made this place a big hub full of nothing but subpar backstory and shitty plot. I mean, don't get me wrong, I still giggled about the stupid little droid being manipulated into running out screaming like a banshee and shooting at Zerka forces.
T1N1, what are you doing out here? You're not supposed to leave the mainframe. I think someone needs a memory wipe.
I still enjoyed the intensity of a 1,000-credit wager for a dancer girl's life, and the fact that she didn't want to be rescued only to return to the guy who sent me to rescue her. But it's hardly worth all of this boring slog, especially when the dialogue is as shoddily written as it is. I mean, I helped to put this smuggler away because these guys are basically cardboard cutouts pretending to be security. And while the lieutenant does show me some gratitude, his dialogue is still as hostile as ever when you ask him about helping to get fuel to the station, claiming that Peragus is all your fault. At least after Zerka sends a mercenary group as a final effort to attack the hippie base, we finally get some real story, as the obvious main villain is introduced to the game. This guy and girl have amazing designs. The girl looks very much like a younger Kreia, so they may be connected. She also looks like a more clothed version of the desert sorceresses in Dark Souls, which is a big plus for, plot reasons. And the guy looks and sounds ominous as all hell. You can't understand what he's saying, and I almost prefer that, at least for now. There's a cadence to his speech as if he's chanting every time he talks. And it really builds up the mystery he naturally exudes. The female then goes on about all life in the universe existing to feed his life force. She also says the line, you know the one.
I have felt it too, my lord. A disturbance in the force.
Yeah, Star Wars! Woo! So yeah, she's sent away to investigate this disturbance, which is no doubt myself and or Kreia. I like this setup. Finally. So we're off to recover our ship, which apparently was not taken by the exchange, go figure. Instead, we're heading down to the surface to figure out who took it, as it's been located somewhere down there. It's probably this chick, but we don't know who she is yet. Anyways, we go through a bizarre sequence of really oddly stitched together cutscenes because the technology back then couldn't handle the game seamlessly loading CG cutscene after CG cutscene. Like it cuts from a 5-second CG scene to a 2-second in-game one to a 1-second CG to a 2-second in-game to a 10-second CG one. And there's quite a bit of loading between each one, so much so that my OBS couldn't keep up with the transitions. Gross. Anyways, our ship gets shot down by God knows who. We crash land and this guy named Baodur lays down some of the most jarring voice acting I've heard in a while. Like, it's not bad, but it's really weird. It almost sounds like he's falling asleep at times.
But nothing should be down there. Orbital cameras show nothing, just an empty mesa.
But anyways, the guy keeps referring to me as General, which adds yet another layer to this multifaceted puzzle. Apparently him and I fought together in the Mandalorian Wars, but my guy barely remembers him. He seems to specialize in technician kind of jobs, and can destroy energy barriers and the like with his skill set. He then tells us that we might be able to learn about the whereabouts of the Ebon Hawk if we head over to a facility located nearby. So we start sprinting through Walmart mercs, as apparently the devs realized that there was little combat on Telos up until this point. Eventually we make it down to an underground base packed with the usual suspects and gimmicky energy barriers that I have to switch to Baodur to dissipate. So after running through Baodur's gates, we make it to a shuttle which should take us to the approximate location of the Ebon Hawk. It's worth noting here that I actually took the time to talk to Kreia at this stage to get a better feel for who and how she is as a person. She has an interesting perspective on life. It's of her opinion that if someone is struggling or needs help, that they should be left to struggle, that it will make them a stronger person. It's a really black and white view for someone so morally gray. The idea that someone could lose everything and become stronger because of it is one that only pans out for very few, and yet she insists that I let it happen to every being that I come across. That acts of charity are merely weakening these people. I mean, I'm talking about shit like me helping some dude who's stuck down here and assisting him to escape the facility.
Whoa, this is gonna be good. Let's keep moving. Where are you? What's the matter? Getting tired? That the best you can do? You're pathetic. Yeah!
And what is it you think you have accomplished? If you seek to aid everyone that suffers in the galaxy, you will only weaken yourself and weaken them.
She just hates me helping anyone who needs it. And going down the light path means that I have to answer her accordingly, netting me the light side points, but losing influence with her. I know that this companion system has made it so that I can get a minimum amount of influence with someone too, but it's kind of hard to tell who I want to min or max my influence with when I first meet them. So with Kreia, I was initially trying to increase my influence with her. The entire companion system is an interesting idea on the surface, but if I have to trade off gaining light side points to gain influence instead, it seems a little bit flawed. Because this would make this system no different than the one that was in place in the previous game, where light side choices affect light side characters positively and dark side choices do the opposite. Alright, so we take this bird out of the hangar and are pursued by more HK-50 units. This whole scene is fucking goofy. Like, we take off, and the HK units come in and figure out that we're headed to the polar region of Telos. Now, a bit of background about Telos here. The whole planet is being rebuilt because after the wars, it's basically been turned into an inhospitable wasteland. When we were looking for the Ebon Hawk earlier, it turned out that there's a small pocket of shielded area on this planet in the polar region where the ship landed, which was overlooked by Zerka forces and prying eyes. Well, the HK units that were pursuing us found out that we were going there and somehow made it over to the polar region before we did. You could say that maybe they were just already there, but that makes no sense when they sit here and show surprise that anyone would be headed to this region. So basically, these guys were not only able to move faster than a shuttle on a direct route, but were also able to shoot us down in the exact same fashion that our first shuttle was shot down. There is absolutely no reason for any of this happening the way that it happened beyond the writers going, hey, wouldn't it be funny if this happened? So yeah, they're here to pursue me as the last one did, apparently. Whatever. So we make it into the base that's here and hey, it's the white-haired lady from before. After everything that Telos and Peragus have inflicted on the player, are you ready for some long-awaited exposition? Because I sure am. So these two goofballs get thrown into some cells while my guy gets interrogated. Oddly enough, Kreia can still use her powers beyond the cell, which is really silly when you think about it. I mean, if she can still use the Force to affect others from within her cell, I'd imagine that escaping would be a pretty distinct possibility. But she basically dives into Atton's thoughts and memories before coming to the conclusion that he dislikes Jedi so much because he apparently feels guilt and self-loathing for something that he did while following one. She calls him a murderer and then tells him that if he doesn't continue to fly our ship and do as we command, that she would tell the Jedi here what he did. I was kind of wondering how we would hold on to this person who very obviously wants nothing to do with us, and here it is. Also worth noting that the subtitles here has her refer to Atton with quotation marks around his name, meaning that it isn't his real name. I would not have figured this out otherwise, since the way that she says his name does not sound like it has any different inflection than it normally does. Anyways, Kreia, being the frigid bitch that she is, continues to torment Atton before telling him that he has no choice but to be useful to us, and then knocks him out. Damn, son. Well, this is probably the point of the game where I'm actually really starting to get invested. Let me reiterate that for you. About 40 to 45 minutes of this video has passed, maybe 30 to 35 if we cut out the mechanics stuff that I've covered, and I am just now starting to actually enjoy the story. We're gonna talk about this later. For now, we get to talk to this Jedi lady by the name of Atris. So your character recognizes her, which I really like as a decision. I mean, yes, you can play the part of the amnesiac, but I like being able to learn about my background through my character actually knowing the person that he's talking to. So my guy followed Revan into the war against the Mandalorians, won the war, and then returned to the Jedi Council where he got exiled. He stuck his lightsaber into a rock or some other King Arthur shit, and then marched out like a badass, basically. Now I can play this a couple of different ways here. I can have my guy go the whole "I'm so sorry for what I did" route, or I can have him go the "you stupid fucks deserved everything that happened to you," or I can go with the "you stupid fucks didn't act at all, and I did." You know how in the last video I sat here and criticized how passive the Jedi Order is? How I sat here complaining about how they decided to wait to see if the Mandalorians would continue to rampage through the system and preaching about how they had to be careful about acting too hastily. Well, good God, I guess I had these thoughts nearly 2 decades after Obsidian did, because one of the main points that I can make here is that I have zero regrets in joining Revan to repel the Mandalorians, to save lives, and to do something good. I can give them shit for basically being the reason why the Jedi Civil War started. It's almost euphoric in how much I can rub Atris's nose and how stupidly passive the Council was throughout this whole entire thing while she babbles about the Jedi way being the equivalent of sitting on a rock and hoping that something good happens every day. So after I'm done slamming Atris here for being a goody two-shoes idiot and hitting her with some hard psychology, she changes the subject and basically says that she's keeping the Ebon Hawk after I destroyed Peragus. Talking to Atris is absolutely infuriating. She rubs it in your face that Peragus' destruction was brought on by you without even knowing why you even destroyed it, or if it even was you. When you tell her that the Sith were hunting you because they believed that you were the last Jedi, she gives this kid on a playground response of, "Nuh-uh, I'm the last Jedi, and if they face me, they will fall." Dude, how are you this dense? What have you done to stop any of this from getting as bad as it has? Anyways, she continues to stand indignantly before you, holier than thou, Bastila incarnate. Fuck me, it's irritating. If that's the response these guys wanted as writers, I applaud them at this stage because holy shit, this lady is insufferable. So eventually she turns you loose after grandstanding about being the last Jedi, claiming that the others who used to be Jedi won't try to help us. Something tells me that if I had been completely submissive to Atris, she'd still have refused my help and not shown me any compassion. Truly the Jedi way. After I leave, the lady from... oh, wait. Yeah, this was the one who stole my ship. Different hairstyle. Yeah, she comes in and gives me this look. Definitely up to something. I'm guessing we'll find out exactly what she's up to later.
Of course, mistress. I will tell the others you are not to be disturbed. And please, do not exhaust yourself. We can attend to matters here.
Alright, so after kicking the handmaiden's asses here before realizing that I cannot take on 5 of them at a time, I head over and gather my party. Kreia plays dumb, acting like she hasn't heard of Atris or knows what happened to Atton, and then we get moving before a cutscene plays out where Atris asks one of her handmaidens to come join us and win my trust. This is definitely an interesting way to tell a story, as the player knows what's going on behind the scenes, but the character does not. It's a lot like a dungeon master telling everyone at a D&D game what's happening with one character, but the other characters at the table aren't supposed to know. Now let's see if we can metagame. So we finally make it off Telos 500 years later, but we have nothing to drive the next objective forward. At least not until our droid here makes it known that while its files were being downloaded by Atris, it downloaded some files of its own. These files include footage of the day that our guy was exiled, which just upsets me more than anything else. This clown council has no idea what they're dealing with, and they're not good at pretending as if they do. You've got some of them saying that he's walking down the path of the dark side like Atris. You've got others saying that he walks a very particular path, one that isn't inherently evil. Though I do imagine that this is more to not define what the player is supposed to do, seeing as you could choose to go dark or light. Unfortunately, this kinda just makes the council look like they're sitting here going, well, he could be an evil asshole, or he could be just different from us. Maybe he's still good. He's one of those choices for sure. I have to say that for my playthrough, I do enjoy the setup a lot more than if I were to go down the dark side. Because if I were, then Atris would be 100% correct about everything that she was saying. Whereas now she's just completely wrong and I have a task to try to get her to see how wrong she is. So these guys continue to toss out vague, secretive platitudes about the path I may or may not be taking, stating that one day they'll tell me exactly the reason why they exiled me. Again, the whole wait and see what happens attitude is really grating, as I feel much of this could have been prevented had they just heard my character out, or at least explained their decision more carefully. Either way, my guy jams his lightsaber into the center stone and walks out. I know this is just me being overly critical of a minor detail, but does the lightsaber thing actually make sense? Lightsabers can only remain on when someone who's attuned to the Force is focusing on it, right? How does it stick into a stone? Like, wouldn't it just clang to the ground after my guy walks away? Or am I thinking about this wrong? And wasn't he cut off from the Force at this point? So how does he still use a lightsaber? Do you have to be a Force user to use a lightsaber? I am very uneducated. Either way. So now the handmaiden from before reveals herself on board the ship, to which Atton tells her to stay in the cargo hold. You can simp for her and tell her that she can take one of the spare bedrooms, or you can tell her that she's more or less a prisoner here. I opted for one of the options in between and told her to not worry about the others, because I want to win her over to my side instead of Atrus's. Then we get a montage of cutscenes where Beodur prompts me to start looking for lightsaber parts, T3 tries to convince Atton to play Pazak with him, and Beodur tries to convince T3 to give him an upgrade. I like these little interactions between my crew on the ship. It definitely gives my companions a little more life. So our goal now that's been given immediately after the whole Jedi Council footage is to track down former members of the Council and, I don't know, I guess talk to them? Maybe ask them for help or something. This means that we can now choose where we want to go and in which order. When conducting a little research, it seems that Nar Shaddaa is usually the optimal first choice, and Korriban would be last. The others seem to be a toss-up, so I'll stick with Nar Shaddaa for now. I was going to launch into companions at this stage and what all of them stand for, but I think I'm going to cover that a little later. So Nar Shaddaa is a moon orbiting the Hutt homeworld of Nal Hutta. Either way, it's a shithole which houses all sorts of seedy and unfortunate groups, including forlorn soldiers from various wars, refugees, criminal elements, mercenaries, and the like. I actually like its appearance quite a lot as we fly in. Atton describes it as having buildings kilometers wide and just as deep with plenty of canyons in between. I've decided to take Atton along since he knows a lot about the area, and have shelved Kreia for the handmaiden. As much as I like the idea of learning what's going on with Kreia, I can't fucking stand her anymore at this point. She's mysterious, yes, but it's literally the only thing keeping me from wanting to send her in an escape pod to the closest star. So I figured I'd take the handmaiden instead, because I actually enjoy her personality as this stoic war maiden. Besides, this way I don't have to hear Kreia nagging me about every little
"Why did you do such a thing? Such kindnesses will mean nothing."
Of course, I couldn't shake this asshole if all of her limbs were lopped off. I'm just trying to piece together why she's so intrusive, and I'm guessing this whole thing is gonna be a Bastila sort of adventure. I'm not saying that I'm gonna eventually win Kreia over and have a beautiful but sorrowful gilf romance with her before killing her. I'm saying that she's probably going to turn on me at some point. Like, she literally has an issue with nearly everything that I do. But I don't get the option to go, "Look buddy, we're not working out here. Maybe have you considered, fucking off?" And she's certainly not making me like her personality, so I can't see her sacrificing herself to have some sort of emotional impact on me as a player. But either way. So the first thing I see on this planet is the swoop race track. Boy, I sure do love me some swoop racing. No entry fee too. I am very excited. So the first time I place around the 50-second mark, but the droid that I'm facing gets a little lower time. No problem, I missed a few boosts and crashed once or twice. So I keep whittling the time down. I spent an hour and a half racing. Then I looked it up. The droid always wins, even if you cheat. I don't know whether to be mad at myself or the game, but I'm mad. I have memorized this track. This is not information that I needed in my life. And then you win the race no matter how poorly you perform. You know, if I had just talked to this lady at the start, I would not have wasted my time here. And I can't be mad at the game because it's not its fault. And I can't be mad at me for just going to try to do something that I wanted to do. But I want to be mad. The lesson here is to not get excited about swoop races no matter what. So after that soul-crushing endeavor, we finally start moving around this place filled with merchants and desperation. You've got a guy who pulls you into an exchange conflict, a couple of vendors which sell junk bits and equipment, and eventually your character begins feeling the life energy here which echoes throughout the Force. Kreia pops in again to tell you how stupid you are and then you gain max Force energy, which is nice. Then I give my ship away. Some dude says it's his, so I give it to him. I guess more so because I wanted to know what was going to happen than anything else. Well, what happens is that a bunch of slavers show up and claim that the landing pad that we landed on is theirs. So the three of us begin slapping ass cheeks all the way to and within the Ebon Hawk. It's worth noting here that Kreia knocks out Beodur just to see what I would do against all of this opposition. And I hate to admit it, but my character does take a pretty strong turn here in that he basically fights his way through this brigade of enemies and tells their leader to stand down and serve him instead. They listen and vacate the ship before the guy who claimed the ship in the first place decides to give it back to me. I have to say, this was a cool-ass scene, as the sheer amount of enemies here probably rivals the endgame of KOTOR 1. And it really made me feel like I was fighting through a company of slavers and not just a handful. Well, right after this, I think two events kind of triggered at once, because suddenly all of my allies are knocked out. Sitting in one of the rooms of the ship is the hooded girl who was talking to the Sith Lord dude from before. Her name is Visas, apparently, and she's been sent here to assassinate me. And she does pull it off a few times before I'm finally able to take her down. She claims that she was ordered to do this and pleads with me to kill her. I refuse, and she winds up in a shipbed before Atton explains that she's a member of a race that he thought to be extinct in this part of the galaxy. My god, this lady is a boundless expanse of exposition. Meeting with her on the ship and probing her for answers reveals that she seems to be the antithesis of the Handmaiden. Kreia only echoes this assertion, claiming that as the Handmaiden walks the path of light, Visas seems to walk the path of the Sith. Her people are blind, using the Force to see, and you and Kreia figure out that someone intentionally decimated her home planet in order to freely move without being detected by those who are Force sensitive. When speaking with Visas directly, she claims that she was the only survivor of a massive attack brought on by the one that she serves now. She doesn't serve him because she was evil and relished in her people dying. She serves him because he took her under his command after annihilating her people and the Jedi who were visiting them. You see, the Jedi had come to her planet of KOTOR to learn how to sense this monstrous threat's presence. And then he detected them on this planet full of Force-sensitive people, and his hunger overcame him. Then he somehow single-handedly murdered every single last one of them. This guy sounds like an incredible villain. Don't get me wrong, I liked Revan and Malak as tangible threats. Their stories were interesting and pretty well thought out. But this guy seems like a monster. I still don't even know his name, and it makes him that much more daunting. What I haven't quite pieced together is why Visas has joined us and is helping us against her master. I guess just because I'm the only thing she's witnessed that has the potential to destroy him. Kreia later explains to me that this entity used to be a man but no longer is. That the magnitude of his power has shaped him into not much more than a starving beast which uses the Force to drain anyone and anything of its life. She claims that a horrible hunger drives him, and that because of that hunger he would never allow for any life to exist. Kreia phrases this very particularly, noting that even the Sith would fall to this monster, which is why he must be stopped at all costs. A morally gray ally to fight a chaotic evil enemy. So what about the gray guy who we saw briefly at the start of the game? Well, Visas has no idea. But she does tell you that there are many factions of the Sith, and that all of them are working to try to end the Jedi, meaning that the gray guy may just be another main villain, which is kinda awesome. It's not often that you see multiple main villains in a game, though it is possible that the gray guy may take the passenger seat and become a side villain when compared to the master which Visas serves. Alright, let's get back to Nar Shaddaa. I'll be bringing Visas and the Handmaiden now because I like them the best. Interestingly enough, Visas is referred to as a Sith not only by herself, but by my character and Kreia as well. And yet when I take a peek at her stats, she's maxed out on the light side just like my character. It's a very interesting way of looking at things which Obsidian has decided to go with here, as it seems that Jedi and Sith are defined more as different factions rather than whether they're simply good or evil. Interesting. So what I've neglected to mention at this stage is the fact that I'm being pursued by a cloister of bounty hunters who all hate each other. They've been ordered to not kill me yet for some reason, and chatting up a former bounty hunter nets me the information that I can provoke a couple of them to attack me against their orders if I play my cards right. We'll see how that goes when we can, but for now this place just has me dicking around with the random side bits here.
I have not trained in the dance, but the Echani fighting arts are very dance-like in their movements.
I'm not entirely sure why this exists, but yeah, alright. So yeah, just random little half-interesting or funny bits to do, but nothing particularly revolutionary. I did read an interview somewhere that Obsidian regretted putting so much focus on the minigames in this game, and I can honestly see why. So the big thing here is how tight of a grip the Exchange has on this place. It makes a lot more sense here than it did on the Citadel. But basically the boss of the Exchange, named KOTOR, is located somewhere on Nar Shaddaa, and he's the one who's hired all of these bounty hunters and told them not to kill me yet. The opposition to this KOTOR is a hut named Voga. Voga is basically the biggest source of fuel now that Peragus is destroyed, but his ships have been hijacked so many times by the Exchange at this stage that he can't even manage to sell his fuel. After having the handmaiden dance for him, I ask him about providing fuel for Telos, and he agrees if I can kill the Exchange's boss. In the meantime, a couple of bounty hunters are shown to be simultaneously at each other's throats while also working for Voga in a sort of double cross between scumlords. At one point, I gather enough ingredients to make one of those fancy, futuristic beam swords that this series seems to be so fond of, so I head back to the ship to craft it. Did you know that the beam sword originally premiered in the hit series Super Smash Bros? It's really cool to see such an homage to Smash in a series like Star Wars, so hats off to Obsidian for that one. Anyways, when I make it back to the ship, Atton berates T3 before Kreia comes over and fucking zaps him. Good god, guys, if you hate T3 that badly, maybe you should just talk to me about it. The funniest part about all of this is that there's no mention of them kicking the shit out of this little guy as he's still racing around the ship and repairing things when I get back on it. Alright, so after flailing around this moon of assholes for a while and just meeting people, I head over to the refugee sector of Nar Shaddaa to mingle with the impoverished. Well, the refugee sector has some of the most baffling level layout I think I've ever seen. A huge chunk of it is just ramps and doors with no one around. One of the doors is guarded by a gang. The only other door that matters leads into the rest of this place, which looks like it should have looked when you first entered the area. I don't understand the first part at all, though given the game's history, it's probably unfinished. I mean, nearly every other part of Nar Shaddaa does a pretty decent job of padding its areas with NPCs to talk to and different events which happen as you approach them. But this place is just emptiness until you run up and down some ramps. But it doesn't stop there. Even the actual area where the refugees hang out is riddled with questionable design choices. It's just a room filled with cargo containers that are completely empty. Nothing to loot, no interesting NPCs to talk to. Hell, there's hardly any uninteresting NPCs to talk to. There are a couple which have various side quests outside of the crates at least, but this place is just a mess of boring boxes. It sucks. And of course you could argue that the refugee sector is supposed to suck, but it doesn't feel good to explore at all, even from a level layout perspective. I imagine if they remastered this game, this entire area would have to be overhauled to make it fun. Oh well. At one point, a couple of Twi'leks approached to tell me that Atton is a murderer, which we knew already. I might have to talk to him about that at some point, but something tells me he won't be very forthcoming with the information. So I make it to this central hub of boxes and get led to more ramps filled with nothing. Eventually I start seeing exchange thugs and wind up freeing a girl who was taken captive by them here. Then I go intimidate the overseer into letting her go despite her already being let go. This place sucks. Alright, so here's the deal. There's the exchange, and then there's the Sirocco thugs. Both have equal control over the refugees. I can talk the exchange into loosening their grip over the area, but the Sirocco have to be dealt with. So I go in and send the Sirocco to attack the exchange, somehow resulting in their deaths despite me completely killing every single exchange thug besides the main guy and his two bodyguards. Then I go talk to the refugees who wanted me to accomplish various things, like this lady who wanted me to loosen the control of the area in order for her to get back to her husband. And when I get back to her, none of the dialogue has changed. I talk to the exchange boss about the Sirocco, and he tells me that they're still an ally to him, despite the fact that they're all dead after having just attacked the exchange. And it's not just this path that's bugged. I reloaded and tried to get the Sirocco gang to attack in different ways, and they still die. I convinced them to try to leave the refugees alone, and this lady still won't go unless I convince her to leave. And convincing her to leave results in her death and dark side points for me. The exchange boss tells me that he'll loosen his grip on the refugees if I either kill or cure this old guy at the front of the area who has some kind of disease. I don't have the skill to cure him, so I convince him to kill himself. And yet the exchange's grip is still strong enough to get the lady who's trying to get back to her husband killed. So I go to the front of the area and talk to the two thugs who are keeping this lady's husband from seeing her, and are keeping her from leaving. And the only options I have are to either fight them or talk to the exchange boss. If I talk to the exchange boss, no new options exist about this lady's husband. If I kill the 2 guards at the front for more dark side points, the lady still dies when she tries to leave. And the funniest part about all of this is that I don't have to send the Siroccos in to attack, and I don't have to deal with the diseased old man at the front. Simply talking to the exchange boss about loosening his grip on the area causes the guy who's the leader of the refugees to thank you and claim that the exchange is no longer a problem. But even doing that still doesn't let this lady get back to her husband. Wonderful. Definitely Game of the Year material. Imagine something like this happening nowadays with a super anticipated title, and people going, well, it's still a great game, it just lacks polish. Funny how things have changed. Whatever, man. At least the refugee leader gives me the final part to construct a lightsaber. Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that. I thought I had all of the parts, but I was missing this one bit for the lens to be stapled onto. So now I can finally construct this thing on the ship. It's here that we witness a pretty interesting cutscene in which Atton pushes past the handmaiden while she's training, and she unleashes a barrage on him after sensing that he might be holding something back. Well, turns out that the guy is well versed in the Yachani methods of fighting, but doesn't reveal how he knows it. You know, as much as I've written Atton off at first, he's beginning to become more and more interesting despite seeming like an opposite-day Carth on the surface. Alright, so the main objective is to get the exchange's attention. The issue is that the exchange should be very much aware of me after I killed most of their dudes and met with one of their bosses. So what this means in game mechanic language is, do a bunch of side quests. But like I said before, I can't even complete a bunch of them. I feel like if you do this stuff in the wrong order, you just can't get certain things to trigger. Like, after I was done with everything, I looked up some guides and a lot of them mentioned to not go back to the ship at a certain point, to not talk to someone at a certain point, and so on. But obviously I wanted to play the game without a guide, and when I did, I wound up in this mess. Thankfully, Obsidian gave me a Get Out of Buggy quest design free card, in the form of this small creature which I can pay 2,000 credits to tell the exchange that I'm a dickhead. I do so, and immediately afterwards the boss from the refugee sector contacts us and tells me to come meet him alone at a bar on this planet. This dude sends this message acting like we've never met before, but whatever. So this is a very obvious trap, as everyone points out. But we don't have a lot of options here. Well, more worrying than the trap is the fact that all of these bounty hunters have reached a breaking point, with many of them now mobilizing to attack the rest of my crew rather than me directly. All except for one. This is Myra. She was seen earlier being grabbed by this Wookiee bounty hunter and threatened, and it seems like she's over this whole bounty on the Jedi. So instead of attacking me directly, she's decided to help me out by guiding me to her secret hideout here in Nar Shaddaa. My character doesn't even question her, and just follows her like the big idiot that he is. And of course she knocks him out with poison gas. She then dons his environment suit and speed tiptoes to the exchange boss here, who reveals that he plans on betraying the main leader of the exchange, Goto. Then the dude zaps the fuck out of Myra. I guess I don't blame her for going, but you'd think that if she knowingly went into a trap to prevent us from heading into a trap, she'd at least, I don't know, have some kind of contingency plan. But alright. So we pan back out to my dude who's still laying on the ground. As he's napping, the Jedi who we came here to find appears and claims to have been watching us on our journey, before he decides that he's going to remain inactive no longer, and go to rescue Myra. So now I gotta go chase the guy who's chasing the girl who tried to help me. So I start slaughtering wave after wave of enemies until I make it to this super secret underground part of the bar. I will say this. When I was happy about the heaps of enemies being tossed at me before, I had 3 people fighting them, so traversing them felt like I was making good progress despite their numbers. When I'm solo, well... yeah, it takes a while. I think I was looking at my phone for most of it, honestly. Eventually I switch over to Myra and give everyone in here the business. This girl fights pretty damn well, and I have zero issues blasting my way out of here and freeing my main character. This is where all hell breaks loose. So my guy struts in and this guy goes, "Ha ha 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 ha! You've fallen right into my trap! First you walk through my bar, filled with poison. Then you walk through the vents here, filled with poison. And now, I will fill this room with poison!" Alright, first off, I have a rebreather. Remember the spaceship from the first game that you can equip on your face? Yeah, they still exist. Secondly, I learned how to hold my breath really well. Check this out. And finally, all of the poison in this place does like 2 HP of health sometimes. I heal faster than that. What the hell plan is this? Either way, it doesn't actually matter, as the obese soldiers that this guy hired actually work for Goto. They kill him and Goto sets off a trap which shocks the fuck out of me. I have not learned how to resist this one yet. So I go down, and A-ONE comes in looking for me along with Beodur and a third flavor of my choice. I chose Depression for my third flavor, so needless to say we're a pretty solid unit. Well, this squad runs into Myra, who's decided to get the hell out of here, because she knows that the exile has been taken away. Where's Kreia during all of this? Mostly being an evil old hag and reviving the Wookiee who Myra killed or nearly killed earlier. She goes, "Hey idiot, welcome back to hell. Go kill the redhead who downed you and you can do whatever the hell you want after that." Well shit. I actually really do enjoy this. It felt like more often than not in KOTOR 1, everything revolved around what your character was doing. There weren't a lot of points where someone else in your crew was doing something while Revan was off fucking around with swoop races. But the followers in this game actually tend to do other things while you're getting slapped around, which I like. It just lends a little more feeling to the story in my opinion. But we're not done yet. Myra informs A-ONE and the gang that we're going to need a particular set of transponder codes to impersonate one of Voga's ships and get Goto to snatch it up from the safety of his stealth field out in space. To do that, we have to pilot T3 into pretending to be the newest model of droid to be used in Voga's warehouse.
And Notch, they're in trouble already. Oh, look at the power! This is one of the strongest, most venomous weapons I've ever seen. The little will it sustain damage as it does that? Oh, look at the slice on the titanium bucket! Pointed steel top!
I like this a lot too, because let's be honest, I am never going to use T3 otherwise. So I grab the codes, hightail it out of there, and fight through more bounty hunters after meeting up with Myra and A-ONE. Meeting up with Myra and A-ONE. Fucking fuck you, fuck stupid ass name. When all this is said and done, we get snatched up by Goto's hidden ship, and then the game pans over to what's happening with the main character. So here's something that I hadn't actually considered. Goto wants to help the Republic, and it actually makes perfect sense. You see, Goto is the leader of the Exchange, and the Exchange is a business at heart, despite being a very shady one. When the Sith were poised to roll over the Republic, they suddenly halted their attacks when Revan left them and later defeated Malak. The Republic was weakened considerably but not taken over and reworked to become a Sith government. Goto actually doesn't care who wins. He just wants the winner to be economically strong so that he can continue his business. The problem is that this new Sith regime isn't focused on taking over the Republic and making it something stronger. It's focused on wiping out the Jedi and random sources of life. So Goto is now hedging his bets and trying to ensure that the Republic gets through the looming crisis after Peragus was destroyed. This is a very well executed plot point, as again Obsidian has decided to not make the Exchange some evil force of chaos that lives to serve the Sith. Instead, they've made them more of a lawful evil which cares more about themselves and profits with no real moral compass. But regardless of what I tell the guy, he won't free me because of my unpredictable nature. So here comes the Saviors, of which I get to choose 2 party members. This place is rough. It doesn't help that the handmaiden actually wouldn't register 2 of her level ups until she got a 3rd. But I'm basically doing my best to cheese these droids when I can, because they fuck both of us up. I actually have to say that I respect it, because the way that I've been playing this game up until now was just charging enemies and decimating them. With Myra, I have to react to what they do, activate my shield if it's not up, and retreat if I need to. It's a totally different playstyle than I've utilized up until this point. Various weapons, mines, shields, and consumables come into play, but eventually I do make it. And I'll tell you this, for as much as I didn't understand the lab station earlier or didn't care about it, I have never been so happy to see it when I did find it. So I free my guy and I'm happy again, because I can just destroy things like I usually do. You really take a lot of things for granted when you're used to beating cheeks on your default dude. Anyways, I run back and forth throughout this ship and gather all of these codes to overload and shut down and generally fuck shit up. And then we finally escape.
As a token of my goodwill, I present to you a gift, this droid.
Yo, wasn't your ship just blown up?
A common misconception not supported by facts.
What? No, it was blown to shit. Yeah, I guess Goto gave us one of these dumbass droids. Cool, I guess. Also, Myra's helping us because the Jedi from earlier hired her, which makes more sense. Dude's named Zez-Kael, which sounds more like a Diablo 2 rune word than a person's name. So we talk to this guy and he kind of fills in some of the blanks, but not really. Basically, he says that there are a few Jedi still left, but that they've scattered on purpose after figuring out that gathering in groups would get them wiped out by this unknown entity. So they're kind of masking themselves and waiting to see if this threat exposes itself. Additionally, the Order seems to be about as clueless as they've always been, as asking why I was exiled yields no results. Like the guy goes, "Yeah, we told you it was because you followed Revan, but I honest to God have no idea why we did it. Cool man, good work." To his credibility, Zez left the Jedi Order on the same day that I was exiled, but this whole thing still doesn't really give us any extra answers. No name of the guy that we're up against, no further scope of his threat, no reason for my being exiled. I will say that Zez seems to have little love for the Jedi Order, which is nice. While he respects a few of the Order's philosophies, he doesn't always agree that the secret keeping is the best method to get results. But then he continues to keep secrets, not because of the Order, but because he promised he would. Alrighty. But beyond this, Zez is actually pretty damn cool. He realized a while ago that for as much as the Order preaches its rules and laws and ideals, they never tend to turn all of that harsh judgment of others back in on themselves. When these people turned away from the Order, people like Revan and Malak and Exar Kun, the Order shook their fists at them and said, these idiots have fallen to the dark side. Maybe we didn't teach them hard enough. But they never looked at their teachings as flawed. Even when the exile returned to face judgment, the Order's decision wasn't to forgive him and learn what they needed to do differently. The decision was to banish him from the Order. Zez tells you all of this in his own words, and it's pretty damn cool to see. So through a series of conversational options which seem like you're going to fight the guy to the death with how he phrases things, he actually teaches you a new lightsaber form in which it looks like you're taking damage. Then he poofs out of existence to Dantooine. So back to the ship, where it's time to talk to everyone again. I know that almost sounds negative with the way that I phrased it, but I honestly enjoy talking to everyone in my party probably more than just about anything else in this game. Seeing them develop, learning about who they are and what they fight for. It not only allows me to appreciate them more as characters, but it also teaches me more about the universe that I've been plopped into. I'm nearly ready to talk about everyone more in depth, seeing as I've almost unlocked every party member. But I still feel like there's a bit more that I need to get through before I do. More importantly, it's time to choose my upgraded class. Each class corresponds to the base classes, but unfortunately not all of them are created equal. The options that I have involve me becoming a Jedi Weapon Master, a Jedi Watchman, or a Jedi Master without the weapon part. From the sounds of it, the Weapon Master seems like the best way to go for me, and the regular Master is pretty much useless in every way. There's a lot of stats and bonuses and moving parts here that would take a long ass time to explain, but just trust me on this one. Secondly, I do a little more training with Kreia to learn how to explore the surface thoughts of every humanoid on the ship, yielding some pretty interesting thoughts of each. The Handmaiden thinks of her father, Visas thinks of her master, Beodur thinks simply of his loyalty to you, Myra ponders your bounty's worth, and Atten simply counts Bazak cards in his head. I enjoy Kreia's teachings, but I've desperately been trying to lower her reputation with me, and her training only makes it so that I gain more with her, unfortunately. And last but not least, I've neglected to mention that there's a familiar face in one of the ship's rooms here.
Answer. If by okay, you mean the loss of almost all my existing assassination protocols, then no, I am not okay.
I wasn't able to repair the poor guy until now, but utilizing the parts from the seemingly countless HK-50 units which have been hunting me under the directive of Goto has done the job in the end. He is not happy at all, but he's here to serve his new master, albeit with a sizable chunk of memory loss after being scrapped. So after all of that is out of the way, it's finally time to fly to our next objective. I figured between Onderon and Dantooine I'd choose the familiar face.
You'll find little welcome here, Jedi.
So this place hasn't really changed too much. I mean, I guess some of the buildings are torn up. It apparently suffered quite a bit under the Jedi Civil War, seeing as there was a main Jedi Order base here. But in terms of the actual lay of the land, much is the exact same. The key differences here revolve around the new government that's been set up in the war's wake, and the mercenaries which have also taken up residence. The government here has actually taken over the old Matale mansion from the first game, and has patched it a bit to become a workable government office. They're trying their best to hang on and grow again, but the mercenaries here are always a thorn in their side, as they've spent their days intimidating and extorting the poor farmers here to keep themselves sustained. So basically, we have our light side and dark side choices spelled out in a matter of seconds.
Do you actually believe a Jedi would return here? After all they've done to us? They wouldn't dare.
A little on the nose, don't you think, Obsidian? Hey Dave, I wrote up a script for some of the people here on Dantooine. It goes like this. You don't honestly believe a Jedi of all people would come back here. They're so arrogant and smug. They never help anyone when they need it. Dave? It's good dialogue, right? Right?
Ah!
Alright, so yeah, people hate the Jedi here and blame them and all that. I'm not gonna lie, I'm a solid 22 pages into this thing and I don't exactly relish the thought of choosing good or evil here. Like, the plight of these people doesn't really do anything for me. It's a pretty boring setup. Maybe I'm in the wrong here and I'll fully acknowledge that if I am, but I would honest to God rather just go to Jedi Master Vrook here. And fortunately, the lady who's running the government here is good friends with him. She told me that he went to the second level of the former Jedi Enclave here, and he hasn't returned from it because it's dangerous for some reason. So I'm just gonna beeline it there, and if it's something I can do right now, I'm just gonna do it without further side questing. And so I get to spelunking. There's definitely a lot going on with these scavengers who have been raiding whatever they can to make money. We're talking people trying to salvage parts from the Enclave that they can't even do much with, in addition to people taking farming equipment from local farmers. For as bursting with wildlife as this planet is, the people here are making it a nightmare to try and live on. So I make it to the end of the Enclave after fighting through tons of these buggy boys, before stumbling upon a historian who's trapped here. He thanks me for freeing him and explains that he's trying to preserve the Jedi knowledge here from scavengers. He also notes that he's looking for a Jedi, and my character seems to recognize him. This is actually the other party member that we would get instead of the handmaiden if we were playing a female, but there's no further personal interaction with him as a male. There is a point where he informs one of the Republic's higher-ups where we are, but that's all that's really done with him, which is odd. So I look around and find some bodies of mercenaries and read one of their datapads, which tells me that Vrook was taken to some caves. So I drudge back and wind up fighting through some mercenaries who were hired to kill me as well. Then I decide to actually loot this place in the hopes that I find some lightsaber bits. And I do wind up finding some in the form of this scavenger who was left down here after all of these bugs attacked. I buy the parts off of him and wind up finding one more person down here who's absolutely mental and has pretty awful voice acting to boot.
I'm a Padawan, and one day I will learn enough to be a Jedi.
I don't know, maybe she just got one take. But either way, I do get another lightsaber from her finally, and I run back out to find this cave. I actually didn't realize the cave I was heading into was the one that I needed to be in. I just saw Crystal Cave and thought of all of the shiny lightsaber flavors that I could create. But yeah, this is also the place where mercenaries are keeping Vrook. I kill them all and Vrook goes, "You big fucking idiot, you always do this." What, save your ass?
When an opponent believes that you are defeated, they no longer consider you a threat, and they relax their guard, become bold.
Oh yeah, alright, that kinda makes sense.
I need to get to Kunda and warn them. They could be attacked at any moment.
Wait, so you needed to tell someone something about being attacked, and we're still waiting in the cage to see if any other juicy gossip dropped from these guys? Yeah, I can't say I expected too much more from one of the people who were just watching the Mandalorians wipe their assholes all over the border of the galaxy. So the people attacking here have been hired by the Exchange to do so. What's super odd to me is that I literally have the boss of the Exchange on the ship. He's just puttering around and pressing buttons. And he only cares about planetary stability so that the Republic can get back on track. And yet when I try to talk to him about this, he doesn't seem to have any dialogue options concerning it. It just seems really odd that I've made it clear that I want the government here to win against the mercs, but the Exchange is prodding a fight. I guess it doesn't really matter to him as long as one side wins, but couldn't Godo just as easily pay the mercs to leave the planet instead of attacking it? I don't know. So I grab some crystals, hop out of the cave, and here's the bad boy option. I politely decline my beam sword into the mercenaries and then head back to the government structure to rendezvous. What I do know now is that there's about to be some chaos on this planet, and that all of the side quests are about to go bye-bye if I initiate the final fight. Again, a lot of the side quests here, just from kind of blowing by and occasionally talking to people, seem to be the kind of collect this thing, find this thing, free this person. I know this is probably taboo, but I'm just gonna get on with it. as Dantooine has never been super impressive to me. At least, that's what I wanted to say. So going straight up to the main questline here seems to have been the best bet, as the prep work that you can do to improve the militia's power here against the incoming mercenaries takes you around to nearly every side quest on the planet from what I can tell. I'm fairly sure that I completed nearly all of them while multitasking to shore up the defenses here. And yeah, none of them are particularly enticing by any stretch of the imagination. I fix up the droids, heal the wounded soldiers, fix the turrets, set up mines, patch up the doorway, and recruit some extra bodies. That last bit had me tracking down a few people I bypassed before this and asking them to join up. So now we're ready to rock.
I will hurry to the mercenary camp and delay their assault however I can.
The objective here is to assign 3 squads around the perimeter to help defend this place. Then I took to the front lines and started beating ass. Eventually we have to fall back, to which this guy from before acts like it's our first time meeting again and threatens to kill us.
Sorry I was held up, but it looks like I've arrived in time to pull you out of your predicament.
Shut the fuck up, Vrook. Absolute worst Jedi. So yeah, this is it for Dantooine. This planet sucked in comparison to Nar Shaddaa. I mean, don't get me wrong, Nar took forever. It had moments where quests just broke for me, but it still had a pretty interesting tapestry of people and ideas at work. Dantooine is the same planet as before, and I actually thought the side quests in KOTOR 1 were better by a lot. There was a murder mystery, the droid who ran away, the Metalis versus the Sandrels. I had fun with those, and there was nothing like that this time around. The base defense was okay at best. The Crystal Cave was relatively interesting. The ruins of the Enclave was annoying. It was just a bunch of broken shit with these bugs running around. I didn't really have fun, but a lot of the time the main payoff for me is discovering more lore as the story advances. But that doesn't happen here. Vrook gives me almost the exact same answers that Zez gave me, and Zez's answers covered a lot of what I already learned on my own.
Somehow our enemy is targeting us through the Force.
We are being targeted through the Force.
This threat is striking through the Force.
In the Miraluka world of KOTOR.
The Miraluka world of KOTOR.
That is most unusual and unnatural.
Such bonds do not seem natural.
I almost feel like this is the fundamental flaw with creating a game where the player can go wherever they want immediately. Don't get me wrong, I'm all for freedom of choice to make a game different the second, third, and fourth time around. But when these major story points can all be triggered in any order, and the game wants to conceal information until the time is right, then there needs to be some kind of variance in dialogue dependent on the order that you trigger said plot points. Vrook should impart different information to me when I tell him that I met Zez, and that Zez told me why the Jedi are hiding out already. But he covers the exact same information, because it's very possible that I could have hit Dantooine first, and that all of this information would have been relatively fresh to me instead. This is only furthered by the comments that he and I both keep making about me having lost my connection to the Force, when it's very obvious at level 19 or whatever I am, that I very much have recovered that connection. So the most interesting stuff that we do get out of Vrook is him confirming that the Jedi Order had nothing to do with the exile getting cut off from the Force. Either way, this is pretty much all Vrook has to offer us, so it's back to the ship. I'm gonna go ahead and finally jump into exactly how I feel about the followers that I've gathered on the Ebon Hawk. Obsidian has done a fantastic job writing these individuals, and they've done really well at making me care about almost every single one of them, probably more so than BioWare did with theirs. I'm not going to score them exactly the same way that I did last time, but understand that when I do wind up placing ones that rank lower, it doesn't necessarily mean that I think they're poorly written. But before I jump into that, it's Audible time. Alright, so picture this. You wake up in the morning and your brand new hard copy of The Lusty Argonian Maid lies glistening on your bedside table, waiting to be read. But you gotta go to work in the salt mines to put video games on your table. This is a very common problem that 98.3% of the population faces every day. You want to read your book, but you gotta do silly things like work or feed your family. What if I told you I had a solution? Because I do. With an Audible membership, you can download and listen to the largest selection of audiobooks. We're talking podcasts and new book releases. We're talking language learning and motivation. We're talking thousands of titles at your grubby fingertips. So now, when you're driving between work and quarantine, you can immerse yourself in a telling of the Siege of Troy. Or you can explore the universe of Dune. I actually read the first Dune a while back and loved it, but I never got the time to continue the series until I got into Audible so that I could listen to the series while editing videos. Or you can click on the erotica section that would probably get this video flagged if that's your cup of tea. I'm not here to judge. But if you were to fire up some high-caliber military-grade erotica while you were at your PC, and then suddenly you got called into work, you could resume in the same spot that you left off at on your smartphone or tablet. Consider that possibility. If any of this piques your gigantic brain's interests, please feel free to visit audible.com/saltfactory for a free 30-day trial of Audible Plus or Audible Premium Plus. Both of these choices grant you access to unlimited listening of the entire Audible Plus catalog and allow you to cancel your membership at any time. That's audible.com/saltfactory. Thanks, guys. I don't necessarily need to go into the semantics of HK-47's personality, as he was featured prominently in the last game. But as I said before, he initially has no idea how he got to this stage, nor does he believe you at first about the newer models of himself hunting you down. When I initially saw HK's broken frame standing in the doorway here, I thought that there was a chance that Obsidian would make him able to be institutionalized in a way that makes him more sympathetic to life. Maybe his memory loss and personality would be restructured to become more kind and caring. But instead, Obsidian decided to crank HK's sarcasm and disdain for life up to 11 by utilizing his sense of pride in being the only HK model that does what he does. After figuring out that I'm not lying about other more advanced models of HK units having been mass-produced, his goal now seems to be to show that he's one of a kind, and that he's the best assassin droid around. I like this slight twist too, as it takes those traits that everyone loves about HK-47 and amplifies them further. Actually, I was going to note this earlier, but I was kind of tired of HK units. I initially thought the devs inserted them as an almost fan service to make people clap and cheer about 47 existing in some capacity in the form of all of these 50 units which hunt you. But it's almost like Obsidian purposefully spammed their asses throughout the game to make the player tired of them, only to bring the genuine article into play and use the player's disdain of the other units to make HK-47 that much better. This is seen in the idea that because the behavioral limiters which were in place in HK-47 throughout KOTOR 1 are now missing, HK-47 can now speak much more freely in just how prideful he is to be what he is. He even claims to hate to have been programmed to call you master.
Oh, how I hate that term. Answer: no, master. I said it again.
Either way, talking to HK amounts to unleashing a torrent of information which gives various background lore about the game. I could get into it, but a lot of it isn't particularly, pertinent to this video. I appreciate its existence, but I don't think that it needs to be covered in depth in the same way that I've been covering everything else.
You see, part of the reason an assassin droid is so effective is because it is a droid. Meatbags tend not to notice us. We are treated as furnishings. Statement: oh, do shut up, you beeping little trash compactor.
But I think the best part about HK is just how much he has to say about Revan. The guy is a waterfall of information, explaining how he thinks that Revan not only joined the Mandalorian Wars to defeat the Mandalorians, but to build his army to crush the Jedi. He explains that Malachor V was basically a proving ground designed to specifically convert as many Jedi as possible while taking out vocal opposition to his plans. He did all of this to dismantle the Jedi, including recruiting forceless humans, because their motives were so much harder to sense. He also joked about human beings being able to defeat Jedi because they're actually human, and have felt human emotion, which many Jedi are taught to suppress and not feel. It's a fascinating listen, and it makes HK-47 that much better. Kreia is easily the most cryptic and frustrating to talk to ally in the game. Almost everything doesn't seem to please her. Almost every positive influence on her revolves around being a cruel asshole who uses others and doesn't help them because that would hinder their growth. She is almost certainly a Sith Lord in disguise with the way that she talks. But she doesn't always agree with the dark side either. Her entire existence is to teach you and make you stronger, and everything that she does seems to have an end in shaping you. But she hardly ever wants to speak about herself or her own thoughts on anything that doesn't involve teaching you. If your influence isn't high enough or low enough with her, she outright refuses to speak to you about pretty much any detail, making her the toughest nut to crack and the most interesting one at the same time. What's up with your eyes?
There is nothing wrong with my sight, if that is your question.
I was initially trying to gain reputation with her, but with a light side playthrough, the most that you can do is go, "Ah shit, sorry I helped those people, you're right, Kreia." So instead I began insulting her for being so cryptic. I lost influence with her and eventually she started to open up to me. It's perfectly clear that Kreia knew Revan to an intimate degree. Of course, she didn't appear in the first game, at least not in the way that she does now. But she has many things to say about him, about his personality and the way that he rose to power. She hates the idea of droids and machines, which explains her zapping T3 earlier. Her reasoning seems to be that Revan was too attached to them, that he relied on them to take care of things for him even though they had no connection to the Force. She also seems to have no idea what corrupted Revan despite him having no interaction with the Sith, which is something that she's pondered for a while. She reveals that while she doesn't directly know Atris, she does feel as if she does, as Atris's existence echoes Kreia's, in that she too once considered herself a Jedi historian before realizing that it was impossible for her to learn everything that she wanted to learn without turning to the Sith for answers as well. Her great nature only echoes this middling ground between Sith and Jedi, as the knowledge that she imparts always seems to lean towards the Sith but never fully dips into its teachings. Eventually she lets it slip that she trained Revan, but the rest of this information is locked behind yet another reputation gate. Additionally, I eventually get the opportunity to ask her how she came to be exiled from the Jedi Order, but that no one seems to remember who she is. She gives one of her cryptic non-answers, and with high enough awareness I can tell Kreia that she's lying to me. This answer alone tells me that a lot of the stuff that she's been telling me might have not been the whole truth. Stuff like not knowing how Revan turned to the dark side, or knowing Atris. But she does let it slip that there are ways to manipulate the Force so that people don't remember certain things. But she won't outright admit to using it against anyone, including you. I would honestly love to continue this deep dive to try to piece together more info about Kreia before making an assessment on her, but I feel as if whatever role she has in the story is going to be very big and very revealing. So for now, despite not being able to get much more out of her even halfway through this game, I'm going to preemptively place her up on the rankings. She's a great character, frustrating, cryptic, standoffish to a ridiculous degree, but all of that mystery makes me wonder what she's after. Is it simply stopping this new threat in the galaxy? How did she train Revan, and what's her connection to him exactly? Everything that she seems to do makes me feel like I'm missing just a handful of pieces to make things fit, and I love the suspense of her simply existing as this constant force of teaching and shrouded enigma. The Handmaiden is a nameless individual who values just how much combat reveals about a person's heart above all else. She opens up to you almost immediately, stating that she trusts you and that she feels as if her master Atris may be wrong about you. Of course, this was right after the cutscene where Atris commands her to go with me, so it's kind of hard to believe if she actually trusts me. She's definitely written as an easy character to really like though, and it's hard to outright distrust her when she comments on your stance, reminding her of both her father and of a great leader. She has taken an oath to not become a Jedi, to which Kreia vaguely hints that you may be able to guide her down the lines of being a Sith instead. Which is... yeah, I don't know. What I do know is that training with her involves both of us fistfighting in our underwear, which is about as close to fan service as you could hope for in a game from 2004. The Handmaiden seems to always have her father on her mind, wanting to not fall the way that he did. This topic is hard to fully grasp at first until the full picture is spelled out by the Handmaiden after reaching a certain influence point with her. Basically, her father was a very strong Jedi who had an affair with another Jedi Master right around the time that Revan was starting to come into play. They were both exiled from the Order, and went to join Revan instead before perishing in the Mandalorian Wars. The Handmaiden doesn't remember her mother, but has a great respect for her father that has doubled as disdain after he left her. She continues to struggle with the idea that her father could be so great and yet also abandon the Jedi Order the way that he did. When she's sent on this mission to accompany the exile, all of these emotions which she kept under lock and key came flooding back, as a reminder of how great her father was. Through time, influence, and sparring, the Handmaiden begins to understand that maybe her father leaving wasn't because he was a misguided person, but because he had to, much like the exile. When you finally get to the end of the Handmaiden's influence tree, she breaks her oath to Atris and begins studying to become a Jedi Guardian under the Exile's influence, which pisses off Kreia so badly that she sends a message across the Force to warn Atris of the Handmaiden's betrayal. There's likely going to be a lot more going on with the Handmaiden's story, but as of right now, I'd say that she's a very solid and likable character with great background and interesting personality quirks. This is a robot. Beep boop. Nah, alright, he's got some background to him, since he is the same unit that followed Revan around in the first game. Not only are there recorded logs in which Bastila tells T3 to continue following Revan, and to escape and find help if something were to happen to him, but the little robot actually knocks out HK-47 when HK gets a little too ambitious with the way that he questions the locking of the astrogation systems. I'm sure there's more mystery to be had, but as with Kreia, I'm gonna put a bookmark in further evaluation of T3 simply due to him probably being tied heavily to the main story as well. So really, without the mystery, T3 is just another boopy robot in which I can skip through all of his beeps to ask him more questions. I really didn't care about him at all in the first game, and the only reason that I care about him now is because of his involvement with other characters. Bao-Dur is definitely a kind soul who regrets a lot of what happened in the Mandalorian Wars. He's fiercely loyal to you, as told by the title of general which he always refers to you as. He absolutely hates Zerka, and was spending his time on Telos trying to eradicate their presence while fixing the planet. He doesn't tell you about himself personally for a while, but he definitely shares the same haunted past as your character. When he does begin to speak about the Mandalorian Wars which you both served in, he claims that he has regrets about being turned into a blind weapon, and letting someone use his rage as a tool to cut down countless people in the war. But that's about it with him for now. He may open up more later, but for now he just seems to be blindly loyal to me, and his background is about as transparent as they come from a mysteriousness perspective. I've kind of discovered what's going on with Atton more so than others throughout this journey, and as such he doesn't have a lot to say to you besides whether or not you want to play Pazak with him, at least not until the game progresses. First you get little whispers of information from Kreia and random people in Nar Shaddaa, but then the nuke drops. Atton was a Republic defector during the Mandalorian Wars. He followed Revan into battle much like my character, and then continued to fight and kill off the Jedi Order during the Jedi Civil War. He believed in Revan's message, that the true battle lied in eradicating the Jedi who turned their back on so many innocents during the Mandalorian Wars. I almost completely agree with him. And this is what KOTOR 2 brings to the table. I absolutely love it. In the first game you had the black and white good versus evil story. Base emotions lead to becoming a Sith. Selfishness leads to becoming a Sith. Tolerance leads to becoming a Jedi. Suppression of emotions leads to becoming a Jedi. In this game, all of my criticisms of the Jedi way, and the things that the Jedi do in the name of being a passive force for good are all brought to light. Atton claims that Jedi hurt others, worm their way into their brains and emotions to manipulate them, and then toss them aside when some threat or another comes along, preaching patience while millions are killed. And yet, this act of being upset, of wanting to avenge the fallen and stop further destruction, makes him a Sith. A lot of my answers that I can choose from follow this train of thought. I can call him a Sith like a toddler, and claim that he only fought war with war. But the reality is that if Revan hadn't done what he did, and led people to fight back, the Mandalorians would have crushed more and more civilizations, swallowing them whole. I respect the hell out of Atton because of this conversation, and it quickly made me go from feeling pretty neutral about him to feeling like he's a great character. That's good writing. Hearing him speak about how easy it is to kill Jedi because they're so overconfident, and how he put up emotional walls to act the way that he does, pretending like he's just some goofy pilot who only cares about gambling, fucking, and most importantly himself. It's almost eerie knowing that all of that hatred lies behind that mask. But the more that he talks, the worse that it gets. Hatred becomes pleasure of killing. It becomes relishing the idea of torturing Jedi and breaking them. This is the kind of thing that the Jedi Order means by closing oneself off to emotion. It's not so much that they think that people shouldn't feel disdain towards those that have hurt their kind. It's that allowing that disdain to grow and consume them can be a very slippery slope. And Atton's story has explained that to me better than any other Star Wars media or backstory. even more than Revan, Malak, or even Anakin. But eventually Atton gets it hammered into his head when a Jedi who hardly knew him tried to save his life by explaining that Revan was taking everyone who was even remotely Force sensitive and torturing them until they became Dark Jedi, and that Atton had a Force sensitivity himself. Well, Atton thought that this was a Jedi trick, and tortured her to death, but not before she reached into his mind and opened that fragment of Force sensitivity to prove that she wasn't lying. When she died, part of him died with her, and he could no longer go on committing the atrocities that he had been. So he fled and took up a new name, before getting involved with you and deciding to try to help right some of his wrongs. After all of this background, you can choose to help Atton become a Jedi Sentinel slowly through training him, which is very cool. I really do enjoy Atton as a character. The entirety of Goto's existence in your party is interesting to me. Yes, he exists as a droid, but his entire purpose seems to chastise you into stabilizing and saving the galaxy. Again, this is because of his own interests in self-preservation rather than any desire for justice. He doesn't care who wins, only that there is a winner. For every fragment of stability I bring to the galaxy, Goto rewards me for my efforts and then prods me to continue onward. Unless I deny the reward because that's the, light thing to do, which I actually wind up doing. Then he doesn't give me anything, which I actually found pretty interesting. Not a lot of games will let you just outright deny a reward for karma, like you usually get one anyway, but yeah. I will say that him blaming me for Peragus Holy is short-sighted, as him explaining to me that I simply should have surrendered to the Sith to prevent its destruction seems about as hypocritical as you can get coming from someone who cares about his own self-preservation first and foremost. You would think that someone with these kind of ever-present philosophies would understand that I have much more potential as far as stabilizing the galaxy is concerned while running free instead of being captured and killed. Additionally, the guy threatens to detonate his droid's proton core if I give the droid any order which directly conflicts with any orders which he's given it. I kind of get it, but I do think the response is a bit rash, because I'm probably the best hope that he's got. Though if it did come to that, I'm sure I'd be a lost cause in his mind at that stage. But either way, this is about as deep as Goto gets, at least for now, and that's totally fine by me. He's a decent character who fills his role perfectly, even with the flaws that he has. Myra is an interesting case. She comes off as a fierce bounty hunter type because, well, she is one. But she's got a lot more going on with her than first meets the eye. She constantly wonders about the exile, about how he got to be how he is while still looking pretty young. It's the first thing that she asked me about on the ship, to which I give her the old tried and true Jedi answer like a Jehovah's Witness about how the Force keeps me young. Then my guy immediately gets the opportunity to ask her about getting busy in bed. That is an extraordinarily quick tonal shift from character to character in this game. Hey, tell me about your master. Hey, what's going on with your father? Hey, wanna bang? Of course, she pretty much laughs off the advance while complimenting my looks and revealing how attracted she is physically to my character. But her reasoning is more about what's going on with me emotionally, noting how my character may look young on the outside, but the inside seems like he's seen hundreds of years. Then she calls me an old man. But I think that just serves to show the complete difference in character between these ladies. Myra's a tough mercenary type with a heart of gold hidden underneath. To compare her character to a later Obsidian title, a lot of her surface level character reminds me of Cassidy in New Vegas. Rough as they come, likes what she likes, and is still willing to threaten your life if you piss her off. She won't open up to you until you've gathered more influence with her, but it's something that you can do by repeating dialogue paths and picking different branches. Myra's a bounty hunter by trade, but she doesn't like to kill her targets. It's the reason why the Wookiee from before is still alive, because she didn't shoot to kill. She's seen enough death after losing her family at Malachor V, and she blames the Jedi as a whole for the planet's destruction, as she should. I think it's interesting to see the other side of the coin here, because whereas Atton blamed the Jedi for taking too long to come to a decision and praised Revan for taking action against the Mandalorians, Myra blames the Jedi and Revan for the wholesale slaughter and destruction of Malachor V, where she was a slave to the Mandalorians. It's a complex subject because she admits that although she was a slave, she was still raised to a degree by the Mandalorians, eventually becoming more or less one of them in a sort of Stockholm Syndrome kind of way. She understands the reasoning for the Jedi stopping the Mandalorians, but she's still bitter towards the Jedi for being so heartless, using the age-old idea that Jedi have no family against them, and claiming that they would never understand what it's like to lose family. So this Wookiee that's been chasing Myra, this Hanhar guy, eventually Myra opens up to me about why he's been after her. So from KOTOR 1, we know that life debts are bonds that Wookiees form and feel when someone saves the life of a Wookiee. When this happens, the Wookiee is bound to their savior until they do something similar, or the person releases them from their life debt. Well, Hanhar was a Zerka Corporation slave from Kashyyyk. Eventually, he broke his bonds and killed his masters. Only instead of learning from the experience in a way where he became good, he took his experience and used it to become a slaver himself. He kills for fun, he enslaves others because he likes it, and he hates humans with a passion because of what they put him through. Myra was another one of Hanhar's targets. And not only did he fail at capturing her, she actually saved his life in the process. The idea that a human could be nice to him after everything that he went through, combined with the life debt that was ingrained into him as a cultural binding, broke Hanhar mentally. He twisted the idea of a life debt into something completely different, corrupting it into something ugly. The life debt became more akin to a death debt, and his sole purpose in life is to kill the human who saved him. That is some philosophically fucked up shit, and I absolutely love it. Obsidian is fantastic at taking these ideas and concepts that were put into place by BioWare and the Star Wars universe as a whole and turning them on their head, looking at them from an angle more human. I covered a lot of Visa's background earlier, but what I can add here is that she definitely has a certain duality to her. Much of the time, she definitely appreciates mercy and doing the right thing, like the Handmaiden. But she also mirrors Kreia in the way that she thinks and talks about the Force, and how everything else seems to be crude matter. She's the epitome of a tragic hero, someone who had everything stripped from her before falling to the dark side. And as such, she wishes to die. She wishes she did die. She's like a more respectable emo. I generally like her as a character. She also has much to teach you in the way that she sees and feels you through the Force, which only further cements her as the antithesis of the Handmaiden. Where the Handmaiden teaches you new fighting techniques, Visas teaches you new Force techniques. But really, as of right now, I don't have much more to say about her. I like her design physically, but I feel like she's pretty much been figured out. It's not inherently a bad thing, despite me giving out points for every character which has some kind of conundrum-inducing background, but it definitely is a lot more simple of a background story than I thought she'd have. I would say that she has the potential opportunity to grow probably more so than any other character besides the Handmaiden. Where Kreia, Atton, Myra, and Goto all have themselves figured out, Visas barely knows what she wants at this stage besides to serve you. We'll see if she actually does wind up growing, but until then I'd place her somewhere in the middle ground. Good God, that was a lot. But your party members are such a core part of this game, and you can tell that Obsidian really wanted to make them one of the primary focuses of it. And I definitely appreciate it because honestly, I probably wouldn't be enjoying this game half as much without them being as fleshed out as they are. So anyways, we head off to Onderon, only to be greeted by a welcoming committee that starts blasting at us. I've got two options here: land on the nearby moon of Dxun, or shoot at ships and then land on the nearby moon of Dxun. At least they made the turret section optional in this one. So we land and Kreia explains that this is where the Mandalorian Wars began, and that until the ship is repaired, we should take a look around. Because, you know, the Force choosing to insert a Space Arby's billboard nearby means that we should get Space Arby's for dinner. So I start drudging up this jungle path, exterminating any wildlife and rogue bounty hunters. You know, the usual stuff. Eventually, we stumble upon a pack of Mandalorians who insist that their leader wants to speak to us.
I am Mandalore, leader of the Mandalorians.
Oh, I recognize that voice. This is this is Mandalore. He's the leader of the Mandalorians, and he spends his time here making sure that his people are taken care of, rebuilding the camp, training his soldiers, and running a successful YouTube channel. So Mandalore here has a shuttle that goes straight to Onderon, but he won't let me use it until I prove myself. Then he's like, yeah, just, I don't know, go find shit to do, man. I guess there's some hidden weapon caches? But yeah, go do side quests. Cool. So I run around Planet of the Side Quests. I fight some dudes in a circle, I loot a lot of their stuff, I kill a guy who got embarrassed in the circle, I find a guy who trapped himself with explosives, I kill every beast in the jungle, I loot a random warehouse, I help fix a relay. Just a lot of average side quests. Though I will say they weren't overly tedious. They're right on the cusp of, that wasn't too bad. So no worries there. I will say that the Mandalorians are likable, but a lot of the younger ones are pretty stupid. I mean, there are some redeeming older members of the race that are pretty understanding of the ways of the world, and aren't outright dickheads to you for no reason. They respect the Jedi for beating them in the wars, and appreciate their strength, using their defeat to train harder and become better. But many of the younger ones have this kind of, if it wasn't for those silly force powers, we would have won the war. And yeah, I guess they're right, but it's a very narrow view of the world, as many of the more seasoned Mandalorians echo. And a lot of that complaining can be boiled down to sucks to suck. My favorite one of these guys is the dude who was born in the wrong generation. The guy's like, if only I had been born earlier so I could have proven myself in the war. Now fight me to the death.
If you head out into the jungle, stay alert.
I mean, yeah, I could have spared him, but he said he was gonna hunt me down later if I did. Either way, I do have a newfound respect for the Mandalorian race, as the most exposure that I had to it before this was the fact that they were just battle-hungry idiots who only wanted to fight tough enemies. Eventually, I encounter some military scouts from Onderon, the same force who shot us down as we tried to land. Apparently, they take orders from a Colonel Tobin, who in turn answers to a General Vaklu. I don't know exactly what's going on with them, but they seem to be in charge of the military of Onderon. So we take care of everything that needs to be taken care of out in the jungle, and then we head back to the circle and fight the strongest warriors of the Mandalorians. And then we report back to Mandalore, who pats us on the back for everything that we did at once.
You defeated Braylor in the battle circle. Either you're very lucky, or you're a lot tougher than you look. Kelborn said you dispatched some covert military scouts in the jungle with him. He spoke highly of your work. Zuka told me you helped out with some repairs around the base. Zarga told me that you returned one of our sheep to the herd. How many Kanaks did you have to kill to find those parts for Zuka?
After this, Mandalore offers to transport us immediately to Onderon, but warns that we won't be able to go back to the Ebon Hawk from there. So if I want to perform any upgrades or do anything like that, I have to do it now. This was something that I was going to complain about earlier, but you know how I didn't realize I could fast travel until a good chunk through KOTOR 1? Yeah, you can't do that at all in this game, and it sucks ass. I didn't worry about it as much on Nar Shaddaa or Dantooine because every load zone was relatively next to each other. Dxun's load zones are vastly set apart from one another, and trekking to the ship back and forth would be a colossal waste of time in my eyes. It's very unfortunate that this game downgrades from the last in this regard, but whatever. I make do with the workbench in the camp, and we finally prepare to ship off to Onderon. Before we head out, Mandalore fills us in a bit on the state of Onderon, claiming that there's a bit of a power struggle between the aforementioned General Vaklu and his cousin Queen Talia. Mandalore views the planet of Onderon as filled with spineless people who have no taste for war. Their society has long been attempting to break from the Republic, seeing as their acquisition into it since then has been filled with war after war. I half knew this information from Goto, who explained that Onderon was going through this, albeit a lot more vaguely. So we're ready to take off, and here comes Kreia to be the smug asshole that she always is, getting into Mandalore's face and telling him how weak his people are. She basically explains that the exile needs to be protected at all costs, and taunts Mandalore with the fact that he still wants answers after being betrayed while traveling with his former leader. Again, I recognize that Mandalore is Canderous, and that the leader that he followed and was betrayed by was Revan. I again find it interesting that Mandalore seems to have no idea who Kreia is, despite her seeming to have been so close to Revan at one point. So hopefully he fills out the last party slot and we can get some answers. In an effort to make sure that Dxun is truly the last destination in this game though, we've got company in the form of an enemy that I haven't seen for a while, the Sith Assassins from the start of the game. They don't take much time to clear out, and fortunately we can finally leave after this. Upon flying into the capital city of Isis, I get to see who I assume to be the Queen talking to one of the Jedi Council about luring out the Dark Force who is currently aiding her cousin and rival General Vaklu.
I fear by then it will be too late.
Oh, and also Mandalore is in my party now, which all but confirms my suspicions that he is my final party member. He seems to dip slightly into the dark side, even more so than Kreia, which is quite a bit more light than he was in the previous game. Interesting. So we go in and get an earful by this guy who tells us that times are rough here with all this political unrest. Then he gives us a starport visa and tells us that we, under no circumstances, are to lose this visa, as it lets us enter and exit the city. Then I head over to the guards here who go, "Alright, come on in, but don't lose your starport visa." We are totally going to lose our starport visa. Anyways, yeah, this place isn't looking too hot. I'm immediately shown a scene in which Vaklu's men are trying to arrest a journalist by calling him a spy for the Republic. I step in and get the guy out of the mess, which doesn't take much. But the main thing here is that we now know for sure that Vaklu is our bad guy working against the Republic, and trying to get Onderon to break bonds with it.
Do you have an open starport visa?
I offer you 2,000 credits if you find an open starport visa.
You have a starport visa, right?
All I ask is get me one open starport visa.
Gathering info from the people here yields that Vaklu is calculating, callous, and has a lot of drive to gain what he wants. He has a direction and he knows how to obtain his goals. Talia, on the other hand, seems to have no direction, at least according to the people. She's got good ideals and she's honest, but her honesty oftentimes breeds more contempt when the people hear the hard truths that she has to offer. I do enjoy this bit of political background because it's a very real situation. A lot of people hear the honeyed words of the general speaking to them, telling them that the Republic has only brought them war while they themselves suffer because of it. Many believe that even if the general is manipulating his way into the position that he's in, he's doing it because he has to do it this way. The main issue, of course, is that if the guy did get into power, it'd be quite the personality flip to go from a manipulative, deception-filled campaign to an honest one where people aren't taken advantage of. Talia, on the other hand, has her people's best interest in mind, but she backs the Republic, the veritable good guys of the galaxy. So while she's honest and faithful to the people, she lacks the experience and drive that the general has. She isn't quite the natural leader that Vaklu is, and many of her subjects see her weakness as their downfall. Visas agrees that Vaklu is the better choice, but I almost wonder if it's because his name starts with a V like hers, because choosing Talia during a non-important dialogue both gives and loses influence with her. But choosing Vaklu doesn't affect her influence at all. Anyways, our current objective is finding one Dagon Gent. Gent is a good friend of Mandalore here, who states that he's helped the Mandalorians against the Republic in the past. Well, a guy is currently being framed for the murder of a Captain Sulio. Asking around yields the info that he didn't do it, as he was actually in the middle of a conversation with a Republic spy when the murder happened. The spy actually recognizes you as someone he served with during the Mandalorian Wars, and it goes on to explain that he's on a vital mission to get back to the Senate to report the political unrest here on Onderon. Mandalore isn't too happy to hear this, as he thought that Gent was against the Republic based on how he always helped the Mandalorians in the past. But as of right now, we can't get to the guy until we find something to prove him innocent. And the spy can't help because he's afraid that if Gent is convicted anyways, then he'd be served a death sentence right alongside him. So I continue to question the people here, but I feel like I haven't had the right questions to ask yet. So I hit some swoop races again, having not learned my lesson from last time. This one was a lot easier though, because I wasn't trying to do anything impossible, so that was nice. But yeah, this investigation can't have any of its phases skipped, which is pretty annoying. I know that it's just organized to go through its steps, but I mean, I checked the trash pile outside a few times and got nothing that I could do with it, and then later on it becomes evident that I need to check it to find more clues. I knew who I needed to talk to, but my character didn't realize that he needed to ask about a certain motive. As a player, I knew what was happening here, but as a character, I have to King's Quest my way back and forth through the required hoops. I just find all of this structure annoying is all. I mean, the ending of this thing has me locating the salvaged parts of a serving droid which had witnessed the crime partially, but was gunned down soon after. The parts in question were salvaged and then sold to a droid vendor here, who I had already talked to, reprogrammed, and browsed the stock of. But of course, those parts weren't available for purchase until I got the quest to this stage. I mean, if just being diligent enough to talk to people and look around an area is enough to foil your big murder mystery plotline, then it probably isn't super well done in my opinion. At any rate, we finally free this guy by presenting the recording, which shows that the murder had been committed by someone coming from the marketplace, whereas Gent was coming out of his office on the opposite end. The major in charge of this investigation keeps doing everything in his power to prevent this from being the truth, but backs down after such ironclad evidence is presented. So we talk to this guy who may just be one of my favorite characters I've met so far, which is pretty impressive at this stage.
I just happened to be too close when she got dead. Real shame. She wasn't bad to look at, and she could drink. A little dirt never killed anyone. Well, maybe a few people. But they didn't pay too well, so they got what they deserve. I give my customers a menu of options. If they go for the deluxe, I'll clean up the place and put on a new smock. Otherwise, they knew the risks.
So yeah, this guy can get us set up with the Jedi Master around here, but some other leader person of the Beast Riders has taken his holodiscs containing his contacts. So I kill them and take the discs. Then I get dark side points for the simple act of trading a starport visa to a girl with a rare lightsaber crystal, because apparently that visa could have been used to help someone who really needed it. Or some other moronic bullshit. As if the crystal wasn't going to ultimately help me do some good in the galaxy. Apparently, trading something for material gain was just a needlessly evil act. Alright, so the meeting is arranged and I make it face to face with Jedi Master Kavar. He's surprised to see me and all that jazz, but he's also interrupted by Vaklu's men as they come in to kill the guy. The Jedi Master stuns the men and then runs away. The Jedi Order, ladies and gentlemen. So something to note here with the way that Visas has been behaving on Onderon. Nearly everything that she's been saying has taken a much darker turn. I mean, this lady has been full light side for the longest time with little prodding from me. But now she's much more vocal about stuff like, hey, we should grenade this whole place so some of these unfortunates die. Which is super jarring since she seemed to be almost this slave entity who is willing to follow whatever the exile thinks is best. Maybe I just misjudged her because she didn't have any big lines on Nar Shaddaa or Dantooine. But yeah, we mop up Kavar's mess because apparently his way of doing things is to just stun and run. Well, now all hell is broken loose as Vaklu's soldiers, random civilians, and the turret system all start firing at us in the streets. Oddly enough, our visa has not been stolen, so we can just leave. Huh, could have sworn I called that one right. Oh well. What I never would have called is the fact that we can now just leave. Like the entire planet. We can't do anything else on Onderon with all the people gunning us down. So it's time to go elsewhere, I guess. Interesting. Oh, and also that fucking crystal that I traded in a fragment of my humanity for or whatever is only usable by Dark Jedi. Wish I would have known that one going in. When I make it back to the Ebon Hawk, I do my usual rounds of checking on everyone. Except this time I finally learned something about Krea's past. And what's revealed is... Good God, dude, you know someone's mad at you when they have every opportunity to saw you in half with a lightsaber and they instead decide to toss you around with Tekken combos for a few minutes. So yeah, she was a Sith Lord. I don't know if she is one now, but yeah. She looked pretty badass, actually. But interestingly enough, I don't learn much about what transpired, really. But I'm guessing that she was the teacher of both of these two, people. The gray guy and the nameless dude. I guess they're both nameless. But a lack of name for both is kinda hard to work around when you're talking about them. Anyways, awesome cutscene actually. I really enjoyed it a lot. Now if only I could get the rest of the information out of her. But for now, let's talk about Mandalore since I haven't really covered him here. I said a lot about him in KOTOR 1, but I think an update on where he's at now couldn't hurt to place him in the rankings. So as we know, before Mandalore became how he is now, he was known as Canderous. Canderous has always respected the strongest and bravest warriors the most. He followed Revan because Revan beat his people, and Canderous respected him for that. So after Revan struck down Malak, he told Canderous where he hid the previous Mandalore's armor, and sent Canderous on the path to becoming the new Mandalore. But either way, Canderous is still the same headstrong guy that he's always been, albeit a bit more seasoned now. I vaguely recall that he would only open up so much at a time in the first game, and that definitely seems to be the case in this one too. I will say that I like that nothing really seems to influence Mandalore. You can sit here and jerk him off and tell him how great you think the Mandalorians are, but you'll get no influence gain. You can tell him that he's a lot weaker than you thought that the great Mandalore would be, and he openly goes, "Yep, I've gotten old." But it doesn't affect his influence negatively. He's just himself and he doesn't really care what you think about him one way or the other, so long as you help him unite his scattered clan while you're on your journey. But my favorite thing that Mandalore does is ask me just as many questions as I ask him. He wants to know what made me join Revan. He wants to know what I think of the Mandalorians. And that really opens up a whole wheel of thoughts that I hadn't really considered until now. If the Mandalorians had won, what would have happened? Like I said before, in KOTOR 1, the Mandalorians were painted as barbaric warmongers who only wanted to fight. But what would the Republic look like with them in command? I don't know if it'd be as compassionate by any means, but it would definitely be stronger than it is now. It's interesting food for thought, and I appreciate Canderous now more than ever for the theoretical ideas that he tosses out. All in all, I'd still say that he's a solid character, and his growth in this game makes him an even better character than he was before. Well, T3 is here to fill in the blanks a bit, as he has footage of Revan and Canderous in the last moments before Canderous left. And, I have no idea what's happening. Firstly, there's no sound, which was done on purpose. But to me, it looks like Canderous is wounded or upset about something, or both. And Revan is in his Sith Lord getup, talking to him with his lightsaber out. Then my guy looks away from the rest of the footage. I don't know if Revan attacked him to torture him or what, but it's fairly obvious that he chose not to kill Canderous on purpose. And then I guess Canderous went on his way to become Mandalore. Huh. So yeah, I looked this up, and apparently this playthrough is not canon. Alright, so guess who didn't read an option properly? This guy right here. I fucked up so hard, dude. Okay, so way at the beginning of the game, Atton goes, blah 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 blah, Revan and Malak. And I had the option of A, Revan was a guy who went to unite all the Sith against the Republic. And B, Revan was a guy who united the Jedi against the Sith. For some reason I saw Sith and unite and my brain crossed some wires and well, apparently the version of this game that I'm playing takes place in a world where we follow Revan rejoining the dark side after his memory loss. Well, fuck. I was woefully confused when T3 popped out a hologram of Bastila going on about Revan being a Sith Lord, and I was even more confused when I saw Revan torturing Canderous. But this definitely explains it. And then later on I see Bastila going on and on about the Starforge and Revan leaving, and I finally decided to look this shit up. And yeah, one option at the start of the game changed everything. Fuck. So yeah, this playthrough is apparently not canon. Though to be fair, if I wanted it to be canon in the first place, I think I needed to be female, so whatever. At least I finally made sense of a lot of this stuff. I was just waiting for the game to fill in the blanks that I created, I guess. Well, yeah, I guess I'll just continue on as if the canon ending was Revan turning to the dark side. I don't know. Anyways. So our options now are going to Korriban or heading back to Telos. Apparently, HK-47 captured and interrogated the shit out of an HK-50 bot while I was out, and found that these endless assassins are being produced on Telos. So I figured that we should take care of this thorn in my side. Oh, alright then, never mind I guess. So it's off to Korriban. Kreia tells us that this place is about as fucked as you would expect it to be, as all of the Sith probably killed each other when Revan defeated Malak, and all that remain now are ghosts and whispers of the past. This little exchange has Kreia telling me that she won't accompany me here, which finally gives me the last bit of lost influence to ask her the specifics about the not only 2 but 3 Sith Lords who currently run the Sith. The first one is the gray guy, who is called Sion. Sion supposedly lives for pain, only wanting to bring his pain to every Jedi that he can get his hands on. She doesn't give us much here, but she does say that he came about directly because of the Mandalorian Wars. Then there's the other nameless one, who she went into detail about earlier. But then, there's the third one she calls the Betrayer. Look, if she's trying to tell me that she's the third Sith Lord, I feel like this one's fairly obvious. Like, she goes, I'm not gonna tell you about her. She needs to be hidden for a while until the time is right. The third Sith Lord called the Betrayer? Tell me again, Kreia, you were once a Sith Lord, right? Alright, just checking. What? Oh, no. I was just wondering. Random question, that's all. So we take the guided tour through the Sith Academy Funhouse and Cotton Candy Factory, taking in the sights of dead Sith Lords and getting to know history about stuff that we pretty much knew already. When we enter the actual academy, Scion is sitting in a room and he tells his dudes, "Go find them." There's only one entrance to this place, finding us really shouldn't be an issue. We snag a recording indicating that the Jedi Master who came here has already made their way to another planet with her apprentice. There's a line here that her apprentice says that actually made me smile just because it's so Obsidian in the way that he treats the Force.
Stuck. Damn, micro-technologies. There's no emotion.
I just think it's funny because the Jedi were all so serious in the first game. As odd as it sounds, this little chunk of dialogue really embodies how well a lot of the characters are written in this game. Though maybe it's just the fact that I'm like 37 pages into this video with no end in sight and I'm starting to lose it. So we head back out and encounter Darth Scion, who's the essence of fury. He hates the Jedi, but he seems to hate Kreia even more. He not only wants her dead, he wants everything that she cares about broken at her feet too. He calls you the last bit of hope that she has to cling on to, and seems almost jealous that she protects you the way that she does. We wind up fighting, but the guy's invincible basically. Eventually, Kreia tells you that fighting him on Korriban is going to be fruitless, as he'll continue to regenerate. So we cheese it, and he lazily tells his men to pursue us. I'd say that this would be it for Korriban, but there's this cave off to the side that Kreia warned me to do last. So we head in and take out a fuck ton of wildlife before I get to an undisturbed part of a Sith rune. I'm told to enter alone, and am immediately greeted by a vision of the past, in which the exile is speaking with Malak about joining the effort against the Mandalorians. All of my speech options involve my character trying to talk Malak out of it, or remarking on how things actually turned out, or the thoughts that my character had at the time. But Malak continues on with his recruitment speech as usual, which is kind of neat to see. I mean, this is one of the only times that you really get to see Malak before half of his face got covered in metal, so this whole scene is pretty fun to watch unfold. Beyond this, we get a few more scenes which all have their own meanings and insights. One of them depicts a point where the exile commanded his troops to continue their attack under Revan's orders. His officer pleads with him to not send them forward, exclaiming that they would have to run through a minefield. You get the option to send them anyways or to defuse the mines yourself, which is okay, I guess. But the next scene is one where Kreia is in her Sith form. She explains that this scene is from the future, as Atton shows up, and then Beodur, T3, and the rest. They all stand against her, and I have to choose a side. I don't choose a side though. I just tell them that they're a dumb vision, and they go horror movie on me.
Apathy is death.
Apathy is death.
Apathy is death.
Apathy is death.
Statement. Apathy is death.
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 Then I move on to the last chamber where a Sith form of myself stands by Darth Revan. We fight, and then Kreia gives me a congratulatory pat on the back for simply living through this dumbass tomb. She says that I glimpsed the future and that the wisdom that I gained here will come in handy later. The foreshadowing is about as disappointing as my rewards, as the main treasure here seems to be equipment that's restricted to the dark side only, and whoa! Is that an adhesive grenade? Sweet fuck, now that is a reward! Do the devs just want me to turn on easy mode with this? I walk out of the tomb with my adhesive grenade. So I head on back to the ship and take off to this new planet which the Jedi Master was supposed to have headed to. When we arrive, it seems that there are no human life forces detected, just droids. And further examination leads to the discovery that there was a tremendous radiation leak which instantly killed off all organic residents here. So I'm to now send in one of my droids to fix this leak so that we can proceed. I decide to send in HK because he's my favorite of the group. I was actually kind of excited to roleplay as HK because of this. And while a lot of the potential inquiries that I can choose from are funny, this place sucks. There's a stage where I can eliminate a particular droid for another assassin droid which was incapable of doing so, but the actual quest involves me running slowly with no force speed to one side of the map, talking to a droid, proceeding further, talking to another droid, heading back to the first droid, and then heading back to the start to eliminate the target. Then the next bit has me again running slowly to one end of this gigantic map, talking to a droid, running to another bit, talking to a different droid who gives me some codes, then running to a computer console, killing off some security droids, entering in some commands, and running all the way back to the very first droid to input these codes. I will say that there's a tiny bit of clever design here in that the second part of the code that I retrieved was supposed to be the current amount of droids on the planet. But since I eliminated 3 of them, the code had been modified to reflect that. But all in all, this was a horrendous example of good level design. I was honestly having trouble staying awake with HK's slow walk cycle from one side to the other, and the charm of playing as him wore off pretty quickly. Well, switching back to the human squad after this does not yield much more in the way of good quest structure.
Then you would have to gain access to the environmental zone to ask ES-05 for help. Only M478 possesses access to security cameras for the whole colony. I can reveal to you that IS-24 and ES-05 have the power to reactivate M478 with their combined authorizations. You will need to gain support from both of them.
Does any of this sound fun? Well, it isn't all that bad, at first. Now that the radiation is gone, this place is about the same as any other planet. You've got droids with different personalities running around, each assigned with various tasks. Vendors, medical suppliers without customers anymore, trash collecting droids, a black market droid who was originally purposed to be a thief. There is a lot to this place. One of my biggest issues though is that I really can't tell which droid is which at a glance besides some of the more obvious suspects. So finding a droid named IS-64 or whatever is a bit harrowing. But there is thankfully a fast travel system in the form of these escort droids, so at least this planet's got that going for it. The only other thing that I really want to mention though is the fact that this was basically a Sith planet, and as such all of these droids were purposed to serve their Sith masters. However, there was a point where it seemed that one of the droids intentionally shut off the doors to the ventilation area, which poisoned the remaining humans here with lethal doses of radiation. Further investigation reveals that said droid was assigned to shut the gates to the most important Sith members here in case of an attack. The radiation leak set off an alarm that signaled to this droid that they were under attack, thus killing off the Sith colonists out here. So yeah, this was a lot of back and forth, but I did get to the end of it. But then I realized, oh yeah, I need to find the first robot, then the second, then the third, and then get them to all work with each other. Fuck me. It's not even really interesting enough to cover in depth, to be honest. I guess some people could be interested in the way that droids function and how a society like theirs is built. I mean, honestly, there's a ridiculous amount of detail put into the way that the Sith have set up what essentially is a tremendous war droid creation facility. But the quest structure is quite literally, go here, do this, then find out that you need to do these 3 other things to do the first thing, then go to the next place and do all of it again. I'm not having fun. I'm not intrigued by the droids anymore. And the whole planet's welcome has worn woefully thin in the matter of 15 minutes or so. Plus, it doesn't help that this planet has been laggier for me than the rest of the game. I'm unsure if it's just the amount of bodies that are loaded in or if it has something to do with it being cut content. So eventually I make it to the Industrial Zone's behavioral core, who's at odds with the Environmental Zone's behavioral core. The latter of these two seems to have been reprogrammed by the Jedi Master who infiltrated the zone, and has been working against the Sith's orders. This is what caused the Sith to lock down everything the way that they did, and caused this whole ordeal to become a massive headache for the player. I mean, the reasons are here for things to be the way that they are, but the quality of gameplay is an annoyance at almost every given opportunity. Fortunately, the Environmental Zone isn't more of the same back and forth fetch quest stuff, as the Jedi Padawan who was with his master on Korriban has taken over the behavioral core and is trying to kill you because he thinks that you're a Sith. When you make it to the end, he claims that his master is dead because they had a force bond and he can no longer feel her presence. I not only talk him into letting us interface with the behavioral core, but I also explain that if his master were dead and they had a force bond, then he also would have died. I see where the game is going with this. Because if Kreia is going to betray us, I wouldn't be able to kill her without dying myself. Meaning this Jedi Master has learned how to break the bond between two people, so that we can do the same with Kreia. Might be wrong about this, but it's just a guess and a vague one at that. But anyways, we still have to get to the main behavioral core of this planet now that the two sub-cores have given me permission to. which of course involves me running around and checking random places for one more power core to get these pylons running. I honest to God see why this is cut content. This whole planet needed more than just a little refining. And while I understand and even appreciate a lot of the ideas at work here, this gameplay is easily some of the worst that I've encountered in regards to pure tedium. Alright, so we finally make it to the Jedi Master, who gives the same answers as always, though she does shed a little more light on the whole bond thing. So basically, her Padawan gave in to the dark side and his fear ran rampant, causing him to lose his bond with his master. So while this didn't exactly go how I thought it might, it does at least give us a little insight on how to break our bond with Kreia. The issue is that with her being morally gray, I don't think that going full light like I have been or full dark would help me break the bond. She's gotta go full dark instead. Maybe. I don't know, we'll see. But anyways, I like this Master Vash the most so far. She basically set out to take the fight to the Sith, discovered that they took this planet over from the original colonists, and were planning to use it to mass manufacture battle droids, which is why she and her Padawan decided to kill them all off using the environmental controls here. Though that said, she did make sure to get the Council's blessing on this particular offensive endeavor. And thank God, because I sure as hell didn't when I fought against the Mandalorians, and look where I'm at now. Anyways, the big droid computer kills her. Yeah, I guess I'm not allowed to have a favorite Jedi Master. You would think that a Jedi Master would be a lot harder to kill, especially one who's gotten this far. Oh well. The reasoning behind the computer killing her is actually kind of interesting though. So basically, the original colonists sent out all of these droids here to make the planet livable for them when they were ready to ship out. They were sending regular updates to the main droid here, and things were going pretty well. Well, eventually something happened to the OG colonists, and they stopped communicating with the planet. This caused the Overseer droid to realize that if the droids on this planet had no purpose, they would all eventually malfunction. So it started to restrict the access that they had while waiting for literally any biological life forms to show up. Well, here came the Sith, and the main droid here was happy to relinquish the planet to them, since it would give all of the droids here a purpose. The Environmental Behavioral Core realized what was happening when Vash and her apprentice infiltrated the planet and tweaked a few things, causing it to rebel against the main Behavioral Core. The Overseer Core realized that if Vash returned, she could do the same thing to the new colonists, and so he killed her over it. So now we have to figure out what to do here. I initially thought that I would have to choose between the main core's new purpose of serving whichever colonists may arrive despite their affiliations, or the Environmental Core's old purpose of serving the OG colonists despite them probably being dead. But then Vash's Padawan comes strolling in and reprograms the main core, causing it to basically reset for a bit. I tell the apprentice that he can come hang out with us on the Ebon Hawk, since he had no other purpose at the moment, and he surprisingly takes me up on that offer before running back. After he leaves, I fire up the core again to tell it to serve me as the new colonist, with the options of having it either continue to build battle droids or to start exporting fuel to Telos. Awesome. Actually, I might have been able to command it to do both, but I don't really care about the battle droids, so whatever. Time to get off this fucking rock. On our way out, Obsidian checked the little menu with all the pictures on it and saw that the party was way too full, and that they couldn't make room for another character to stay on the ship with us. So this happens.
Listen to me. Clear your thoughts.
I've seen this before.
Exile. What is... How?
Let's see, what did Kreia say to me?
Can't...
Oh yeah! Clear your lungs. Let the air fill your mind. Wait, no. Shit. Believe in the Force, and you can hold your breath really long.
Sorry.
God, I suck at teaching.
Target located.
I don't even really get an answer as to why they killed him. I just kind of roll past his body after seeing if it had loot. This planet is terrible. My God. Well, whatever. When I get back to the Hawk, T3 has a message to me from Kavar, urging me to go back to Dxun. I think I'm gonna do that in a moment. I have some Telos fuel to restore.
Now, I believe I gave you my word that there would be a reward for information leading to the establishment of a fuel source for the station. Never believed for a moment that you'd actually be collecting it. But I'm a man of my word. So here you are.
Yeah! Oh, you brought stability to the Citadel by providing us with a fuel source in a very dire time? Here's 1,000 fun bucks that couldn't afford you even close to high-end gear. Have fun. Wonderful. So we get back to Dxun, and apparently Kavar had the Queen arrange safe passage to the palace for us. Except right after that, Vaklu declared the Queen to be guilty of treason, and now their coup attempt has launched the city into civil war. Additionally, Sith forces seem to be landing here on Dxun around an ancient tomb of a Sith Lord known as Freedon Nad, which honest to God sounds like a punchline to an elaborate dick joke. But either way, I'm splitting the party into the Shoot Squad and the Saber Squad. Shoot Squad runs through the jungle, disables Sith forces, and infiltrates the tomb. Then they puzzle their way through the tomb and make it to the Sith Lord at the end, who was performing some kind of ritual. Then they have a philosophical conversation with the Lord about how the Jedi restrict emotions like anger and how stupid that is. I actually reloaded a save here to figure out how the light or dark side choices go here, and spoiler alert, it doesn't fucking matter. The light side choice is the typical, "You have fallen to the dark side. You can still come back to the light. I will not join you." And the dark side option is, "Oh shit, the dark side, please. Tell me more." Yes, that does sound good. Oh, what? Join you? Nah, that power is all mine. Whatever that means. Dude literally says the same thing about rejecting freedom and power no matter which option you pick. So what a wonderful illusion of choice for the sake of increasing your light or dark side. After this, I loot Freedon Nad's short lightsaber. God. Anyways, the Sword Squad is in full effect now, and Kreia is a requirement in it. So we blast down planetside with a warship and land smack in the middle of Isis. The soldiers here think the Mandalorians are attacking on the account of us landing a Mandalorian ship in the middle of a city for some reason. Here's a completely out of nowhere non sequitur for you guys. This guy...
There are 2 force shield checkpoints along this path. Vaklu's forces have held this ramp for over a standard hour.
Shares the same voice actor as Goto, Darren Norris. It finally clicked after hearing Captain Bostuko's voice. But more importantly, my dad went to high school with the voice actor. I know that's got nothing to do with anything, but I felt like it was very pertinent information in my KOTOR 2 video for some reason. So we bust through this palace, slaying enemy after enemy with absolutely no resistance. This game is and has been an absolute cakewalk for a while now. Probably since I obtained my lightsabers and upgraded them. Not that I'm complaining, honestly, I just feel very powerful. I know that this is a lot to expect from a game from 2004, but I would love to see a game like this realize how easy that you're having it and adjust villain reactions accordingly. Because even up until the end, these guys are like, "Whoa, the Jedi? How did he make it past the dozens and dozens of men that we had here before this? Kill him!" Okay, buddy. Well, Vaklu dies by Talia's orders, the day is saved, blah blah blah. Then Kreia reses Vaklu's man Tobin and tells him there's a secret Jedi base on Telos before sending him on his way. I don't know when she managed to do this, but apparently this was her required purpose in my party. So now we've got a deranged Wookiee and a pissed off Sith-adjacent soldier working against us due to Kreia's machinations. Grand. So it's Jedi Master Interrogation Power Hour once again, where we get a tiny scrap of information to dine on until the next big meet and greet. This time we get told that the Jedi scattered not only to hide, but to look for me. Apparently whatever had happened to me, which they're still not sure about, is something that they believed I had figured out. So they waited to see where I'd turn up so that they could basically intercept me.
You must have many questions. You deserve answers. And these questions I cannot answer.
Yeah, that seems about right. I think these guys have told me nearly everything that I couldn't figure out for myself at this stage, and all of them have vowed to return to Dantooine for the next part of shaky planning that probably revolves around me doing all of the heavy lifting. I will say that Kavar was surprised to have learned that Atris was on Telos, which mirrors the other Jedi Masters' reactions, seeing as they all believed her to have been on KOTOR when it was attacked. Either way, we learn our new useless force move and then head back to Dxun. I gotta say, that's something I haven't really touched on. These force stances seemed a lot more useful earlier on, But again, once you hit a certain stage of power, I feel like there's far too many to cycle through and to make sense of. So I kinda stopped using them besides the one that restores my force points faster when I'm running low. The whole system seemed like a good idea on the surface, but when I have this many forms to choose from at any given time, and I have to flip through them like a notebook, I just really don't feel like clicking to find which one I want to use while counting the enemies and the enemy types to adjust to every single battle. But either way, we come back to the ship and watch yet another scene where one of the droids gets zapped by another character. I don't quite get these scenes. Like the first time, Kreia zapped T3 and I rushed over expecting to find T3's shell on the ground. But he was fine and nothing really happened. The second time, I was at least able to inquire about the astronavigation system with HK being zapped by T3. But this time, Goto zaps Bao-Dur's dumb little robot orb, and I was thinking, okay, this time the remote won't be here since he's not a party member, and Bao-Dur's gonna be pissed about it. Nope, remote's still here, Bao-Dur has nothing to say, Goto has nothing to say. Either I'm missing a puzzle piece or this was just supposed to be some form of comedy. Anyways, it's off to Dantooine's Enclave, where we get a cutscene to see what Tobin's up to before checking in on the Jedi. Well, looks like he made it to the big masky Sith Lord whose name we still don't know this far into the game. Of course, a Sith Lord wouldn't be a Sith Lord if he didn't force choke a subordinate, so we get that cliche out of the way before Tobin tells him that Telos is stuffed to the rafters with plump little Jedi fuckers. Good knowing you, Atris. So now at the end of this Jedi hunt, we finally get some actual answers. What these guys tell me takes a bit to fully grasp, but basically the exile has always been incredibly gifted in the ways of the Force. He made connections extraordinarily easily, connections which usually take a very long time to forge for the average Force user. It explains why so many of my party members have stuck around despite quite a few of them having conflicts to some degree with me. The Handmaiden turning her back on Atris, Visas turning on her master, Atton sticking around despite being selfish, despite his secret being a secret no longer. The list goes on and on. But the point is that the Jedi Order didn't only exile you just because you joined Revan, they were also afraid of you. They were afraid that you would bond with the Jedi Masters in the same way, and basically control them. When you were cut off from the Force, it was you who did it to yourself. Because when thousands died at Malachor V at the end of the Mandalorian Wars, your character felt the connection to those thousands, and had to cut himself off to better protect himself from the pain. Oh, but it gets better. So imagine an experience system in an RPG where every time you killed an enemy you gain XP. That encompasses nearly every single RPG to some caliber, right? But KOTOR 2 takes that shit literally. Instead of imagining the XP system as your character practicing getting better over time, imagine instead your character absorbing the life force of the enemies that he kills. That is what's happening here. They take that incredibly meta idea and make it into a reality, with the Jedi Council stating that all of the beings which you've killed have been used to some degree to make you as powerful as you are, and that you've been feeding the hole that was torn into you at Malachor V. That sounds awfully familiar to the main antagonist of this game, does it not? And now we come to the apex of this little trial. The Jedi Order has decided that my existence only inspires more Sith to learn of how I siphon the Force from others. And as such, they've decided to actually cut me off from the Force themselves. Now I have a choice here to submit to them cutting me off or to start swinging, but I'm willing to bet that I won't be cut off either way, seeing as Kreia and Visas have now started attacking each other in another part of the Enclave. It's worth noting here that I absolutely despise the Council's choice here. To sit here and blame another for their failings even at the end. To act as if they weren't the cause for most, if not all of the problems which put them where they're at now. I can't say that I imagine them suddenly changing now after cowering away and hiding after everything that's happened, but it still sucks to see them go, ah yes, sealing away the exile's power is the way to go. You know, the one that helped unite us? The one that's got the best chance of stopping all of this? Yeah, let's cut him off. If we do that, we should be safe. So I choose to submit to the Council before, indeed, Kreia comes sauntering in to lecture someone else besides myself for a change. This is another complex idea to sift through, but I believe that Kreia's teachings here are that in order to fully understand the Sith threat that's blinding and lashing out at the Jedi, you must have become a Sith yourself, to walk the dark side and understand it. I still don't 100% understand what her end goal is, besides protecting the exile and making him stronger, but I imagine that it may have something to do with stopping the two Sith Lords who struck her down. But for now, she calls the Order a bunch of hypocrites who refuse to do what needs to be done to attain their goals. She chooses her words very carefully here.
He has brought truth, and you condemn it? The arrogance! If you had traveled far enough, rather than waiting for the echo to reach you, perhaps you would have seen it for what it was.
There's something extraordinarily damning in those words which she uses. And again, I don't have the full picture, but I imagine that I'll circle back to this eventually. The 3 remaining Jedi Council lie dead before me at Krea's hand, and I gain probably the best power that I could have asked for, Force Enlightenment. It basically activates all 3 of my main buffs in one click, which single-handedly crushes one of the biggest issues that I've had with buffing in combat. So, what's going to happen next is a lot. So after Krea seemingly killed you and everyone else here at the Citadel from an outside point of view, the Handmaiden loses her shit and forcibly takes Krea away to Telos to answer to Atris. Of course, if she had any brains behind all of that brawn, she'd probably realize that someone who just managed to kill 4 Master Jedi with no issue would easily be able to resist her arrest. But the Handmaiden has always been more of a fighter and less of a thinker. It never occurs to her that literally everything is going according to Krea's master plan. Also, how did they fucking get there without the Ebon Hawk? So we take off for Telos, and Visa stops in on the exile while he's meditating. He ponders if he's been controlling everyone to do his bidding without realizing it this whole time. He expresses this concern to her, and she assures him that the reason that she turned away from her Sith master to follow him instead is because she loves him. She explains that ever since she felt his presence in the Force, she instantaneously fell in love with the idea of someone who had lost as much as she had, who had been wounded the same way that she was. It's hard to say if her feeling that overwhelming sensation of love is due solely to the empathy of finding someone as emotionally broken as her, or if it's exactly because that so-called wound in the Force that the exile bears is that powerful. It may be a mixture of both, honestly. But it explains a lot as to why Visas is so willing to give her life to the exile after just meeting him. I like this explanation. It's pretty much the only one that would work here besides the one where she's really using him and pretending to be this devoted. And let's be honest, if the lady who's openly a servant of the main antagonist of the game suddenly joins your side only to go, "Aha! I tricked you, I was a spy!" then that would be pretty fucking lame. So anyways, her and I force fuck each other, which sounds way more vigorous and intimate than sitting across from each other and turning blue, but I guess it's the best thing a Jedi can hope for. When we arrive, we peek in on how things have been going with Atris, Krea, and the Handmaiden, which sounds like a C.S. Lewis novel in disguise. So Atris still only vaguely understands who Krea is. She's not hostile towards her, at least not physically. But Krea reveals that her Sith handle was Darth Treya, which is way more on the nose than I was hoping for. Darth Treya, known for betrayal. Very subtle. If Sith Lords are this overt about their naming process, I really have to wonder about Nad now. But she explains that she was the one who planted the idea into Atris's mind to push for the exile to be exiled. She also seems to have erased Atris's memories about her, at least to some degree. Then Krea starts methodically picking at Atris's decisions and ideologies. She tells her that she knows that Atris has been collecting and harvesting Sith knowledge to study and understand better, and it's caused her to fall from the light, which is why Atris surrounds herself with servants which cannot feel the Force. Atris tries to defend herself by claiming that this gathering of Sith artifacts and holocrons was a necessity in learning about her enemy, which makes a lot of sense, but apparently this knowledge has caused her to falter in the Jedi way. Meanwhile, the Handmaiden... Actually, what happened here? The Handmaiden brought her in, Krea walked ahead to Atris, and then the Handmaiden walked in after her? I don't know, whatever. So the Handmaiden is now confronting her sisters, who have all declared her to be a traitor. I called this fight, "Don't accidentally crit, or you'll fall to the dark side." So yeah, I knocked the sisters out and then Atris comes in and fights me, but then she just Sith lightnings my ass after the fight's over. The exile shows up and Atris runs into the Sith knowledge room before revealing just how fucking insane she actually is. She was the one who leaked information to the Sith when the Jedi Order gathered on KOTOR. She did this to draw out the threat and figure out how to defeat it. It's such a great motive because she really isn't a Jedi at this stage, but she's actively trying to defeat the Sith. She's the epitome of an overzealous paladin who commits atrocities in the name of justice. Her entire goal at this stage is to kill you, the person who she blames everything on, and then kill the Sith. And then she wants to rebuild the Jedi Order, and teach them all of the Jedi teachings and all of the Sith teachings, effectively merging the two. She wants the Order to have no weaknesses. She wants to become something new, something that's able to act when necessary and not implode by killing each other. That's a really good goal. I would love to see the Sith and Jedi somehow merge into some kind of superpower. I don't know what you'd call it. Maybe Jeth, which sounds like somebody saying Jeff with a lisp. Anyways, I guess the only thing that I take issue with regarding her motivations and character is the fact that she's so adamant about how the exile was a piece of shit for abandoning the Council's orders and following Revan to war. And yet she wants a new order that reacts to threats immediately instead of answering with passivity. Though to be fair, she may have been more adamant about his actions before just because she wanted him dead, but couldn't admit that to the Council. So the whole, "you went to war and disobeyed us when we told you to wait" thing is a pretty good cover story. I guess she also could have just changed her mind over time. Basically though, Atris took exactly the same feelings that I had about the Jedi Council and KOTOR 1 and cranked them up to 11. I've always said that they were passive cowards who did nothing despite a threat ripping through civilizations. And if they had reacted immediately, then Revan wouldn't have even had the opportunity to rebel. At least not in the same way with the same amount of people. But instead they sat on their ass while Revan and the rest of the rebels went on and actually did something, and then shunned the exile for disobeying. So most of the core idea that Atris has here is stuff that I actually agree with. Now the issue here is the way that she's going about it. I don't understand how we went from, "Man, this Jedi Order is so weak now, they're nothing like they used to be," to, "Yeah, they deserve to die. Fuck those guys, I'll make my own Jedi Order." I don't know. I just hate the personality conflicts that she has. Like you're telling me that Atris is the true mastermind behind a lot of this. That she manipulated and twisted and arranged things just right so that when the exile returned to the galaxy, the Sith would know where he was and who he was. That she deceived the other members of the Order so thoroughly that she was able to make them think that she was dead or elsewhere. And at the end of the day, what does she want to do the most? She wants to shed every bit of subtlety and tactical genius to pound her chest and scream into the air, "Come fight me, Sith!" Couldn't she have just told the Sith that there were a ton of Jedi on Telos from the very start and waited for them so that she could vanquish them? Why jump through all of these hoops for the same result? It's not like she's any more prepared than she was before. It's not like she's learned some new, exciting information that has now given her a weakness to work against. Alright, enough of this. Let's fight. Yeah, that doesn't surprise me. So she tells me to kill her, and I tell her nah. She goes, "I cannot believe you would spare me after all we have been through." Dude, I've been saying I'd spare you the entire time. Whatever. So I ask where Kreia went, and she's like, "Dude, I got no clue. But if you hang on a second, I can ask these dumbass triangles that are floating around." Uh-huh. Yep. Mm-hmm. Ah, yes. Yeah, this is gibberish. Who is this for? Why does the hissing go on this long? Why does the cutscene have multiple angles of the triangle hissing? Either way, Atris imparts the information that Kreia is now waiting on Malachor V to put an end to all of this. She's extraordinarily good at chartering ships in the far reaches of Telos with no civilization around. I was sitting here thinking, yeah, but what if I just don't go? Only to be reminded of the stipulation that Kreia can just kill herself and it'll kill me because we're still connected. Right, forgot about that one. So I guess we'll just go kill her and it'll kill me anyways. I don't know what's going on there. I just love that my character goes, but how could Kreia be a Sith? Yeah, no, I definitely would have noticed that. Oh, I would have noticed she was a Sith. Yeah, no, I would have noticed that. Christ on a cross, literally the only thing not Sith about her is the part where her force stays neutral the entire game. Anyways, Atris dismisses the exile by telling him that she loves him, and then sends him on his way with his lunchbox and backpack to go do something about the mean lady. But before we get to that, I'm suddenly thrust into a solo party consisting of just HK-47. I assumed that he jumped off the Hawk on Telos and headed straight for the HK factory to take care of it. I just didn't think he'd be doing it alone. So here we are again, with the character doomed to slowly run through long layouts of samey looking bullshit. This time we have 3 corridors that are laid out nearly identically besides the end parts. And of course we have to do things in the correct order. For example, I went to the communications room, then the maintenance area, then the reactor. What I was really supposed to do was go to the reactor, get stopped by the HK-50 units, then go to the other 2 rooms and then back to the reactor. At least the banter between these droids is pretty funny to listen to, as they all scoff about how superior they are to HK-47. I still don't quite understand why Goto has sent them on the goose chase that they're on if they're ultimately trying to kill the Jedi, which would destabilize the Republic.
This core can also be detonated when in proximity to a large number of targets. Addendum statement, or when the proper release code is transmitted. Irritated statement. I do not understand why you felt the need to mention that.
Alright, so HK-47 has one of the repair droids here modify his behavioral core to make it so that he can actually attack the other HK units. Because before this, he couldn't attack the HK-50s and the HK-50s couldn't attack him. You know what would have been a cool game moment? Having the other HK units still not be able to fire at you after, and you just one-shot them all as you stroll through this facility. Is it challenging? No. But it would be one of those cool game moments where you really feel like the ultimate assassination droid. You want to know how things actually go? This is like RuneScape fighting at this stage. Except I know that I'm not going to level up my skills, and I know that I'm not going to gain a cool drop. So yeah, you know what I just decided? I decided to run. I just ran past everything, spamming heals and shields. I mean, for the love of God, there are so many droids packed into these areas and they have a metric fuckload of hit points. How the fuck did we go from, wow, I'm one-shotting everything as a Jedi, to every battle takes 10 minutes? I looked it up at one point, and some people claim that even if I grab the really good weapon and the really good armor from around the area, it goes from, ah shit, I gotta spam heals, to, ah shit, I gotta make dinner while this battle plays and come back to heal between stirring the soup. Either way, I run through the facility, upload HK-47's behavioral core data into the HK-51 production line, and then shut down the HK-50 production line. The result has the HK-51s waking up and obeying 47. This means that I have now created an army of free-willed assassination machines. Awesome. I actually do like this conclusion a lot, as HK-47 seems to have finally found his place in this universe after worrying about being obsolete.
Once upon a time, organic meat bags bred out of control and filled the galaxy. There are different meat bags across different planets, all bumping into each other. They talk a great deal and threaten each other for various reasons, mostly involving mating, survival, and resources. It is really quite tiresome.
So back to the main squad here, who have found themselves on Citadel Station pending the Sith invading Telos. I thought we were going to Malachor V, but I guess we decided to help people or some Jedi shit like that. I imagine that the masked Sith Lord is here, so maybe we fight him first. Either way, the captain, whose name I can't remember from before, tells us about the situation, claiming that Citadel Station will fall if we can't repel the Sith.
It's a good thing you got us that fuel from those droids.
So yeah, it's time for Atton and I to clap these Sith all around the station. Something that I never really mentioned is the problem with Atton going from scoundrel to Jedi. It's not a huge deal, but I was kind of setting this guy up to be a sharpshooter kind of dude. And now suddenly he can wield a lightsaber and use force powers, and it makes him nearly useless until you can completely restructure his skill set. It's the reason that I hadn't really used him until now, because I went from having all of the perks to make him a decent gunslinger to having to allocate enough points to make him a pretty good Jedi. I get why they did it, and it's almost cool that he can turn into a sentinel, but I almost wish I would have been able to respend some points down his scoundrel tree to better support his sentinel class. It's like if you're starting out as a rogue class in D&D, and then right around level 11 the DM goes, you fall into a mystical waterfall and it turns you into a paladin. Can you make this dual class work? Yeah, probably. But your skills had been planned around being a rogue at this stage, so it's gonna take a while. Anyways, this scene is surprisingly really damn cool. These Sith are just being destroyed by not only me, but by the people that I've helped out and the droids from the droid planet that I sent over to deliver fuel to Telos. After we take care of the station, I take Mandalore and Visas onto the Sith Lord's ship called the Ravager. Apparently the ship was one of the main ones at Malachor V, and Canderous has a score to settle. Oh, also Visas reveals him to be Canderous, which isn't a big surprise, obviously. So we run through the ship encountering very weak resistance, while arming 4 bombs to destroy the ship. KOTOR does its KOTOR thing and doesn't let me interact with a missile, only for one of the bombs to go off early, which has me backpedaling to the missile to extract its proton core for a new bomb. Visas goes back to her cell for a little meditation, which allows her to forget her hatred and become more powerful or whatever. The thing that stands out to me in this cell is the fact that there's a rock-hard bed, a couple of sinks, a huge lounge, room with big gray brick, and this fucking meditation chamber. Shit's bigger than my apartment, but at least my place has a shower and toilet. Alright, let's get to it. So we finally make it to our foe, who we figure out the name of. Darth Nihilus. Nobody says his name. I don't know why. And man, I'm sure people are gonna disagree with this, but what a squandered opportunity. You set this guy up to be this all-consuming monster, and you want to know what exactly happened. You want to know what he looks like, why he is the way he is. But the battle lasts 2 rounds, and then he just dies after that. Visas looks at his face, but that's it. And the worst part of all is this. Really, dude? I get that he was always talking like this, but I figured that was more of a device to keep him more mysterious. I figured that he'd switch over to Galactic Common or whatever the hell it's called. But no, it's just like talking to T3 again. Man, everything about this was a letdown. But at least after we're done, we still have one last foe to take out. I don't necessarily want to continue to extrapolate into the false canon where Revan went back to the dark side, but it is worth noting that in that event, he tells Canderous that the Mandalorians were tricked and used to instigate the Mandalorian Wars by an outside force who wants to see the galaxy ruined. Either we get the full story at the end of this game, or they're setting up for a KOTOR 3 that never happened. So after we blow this thing to shit, it's time to go to...
Malachor V. Malachor V. Malachor V.
Malachor V. Malachor V. Malachor V.
Yeah, that place. It's kind of a shithole. Green lightning everywhere, a Sith citadel thing, pointy rocks. Krea's back to being her Sith self and has no interest in the sneaky Sith cronies, killing them all as she makes it back to this temple. I had forgotten that Scion was still out there, but apparently he was just chilling here in the place where he initially WWE super slammed Krea into the ground. This time though, she's handless, meaning that she's a lot more powerful than him. So this guy who had a ton of potential to be super interesting goes from wanting to kill her in the exile at all costs to following her command and becoming her apprentice again. Though to be fair, I'm willing to bet that he's just feigning servitude so that he can kill me to get back at her. So this planet is just kind of a crackly spiderweb maze of little kaiju monsters and pockets of poison gas. Apparently, as the Ebon Hawk was crashing, every single person except the exile got flung out the windows or something, because it's just me here. And eventually it pans over to Myra because the whole business with the Wookiee Hanhar was never settled. Good God, they made that creepier than necessary. But yeah, you fight him, he goes down, he explains that he hates you more than anything, etc. He wants Myra to kill him, but she tells him that she wants him to lead her to Krea, and he agrees in the hopes that Krea will kill Myra. I think I'm emotionally tapped out with some of this stuff, because the initial story between Myra and Hanhar is very cool, and has a lot of layers to it. Especially with the way that Hanhar used to be a slave and then went crazy and then enslaved everyone that he could after escaping. I love that background story. But that's all there is to it, because instead of fleshing him out more or maybe finding some more information about his exploits during our adventure, he just gets copy and pasted from one end of the story to the other. Nothing to keep him in the back of our minds, nothing to make us wonder where he is or when he'll pop up again. It just seems lazy is all. Here's some peak 2004 video game design for you. Who's controlling the doors? Why are they still functional when everything else on this rock is destroyed? Did the Sith build them just for one greater storm beast to fight people in? Who knows? But either way, I'm just glad I don't have to play every single character one at a time, as 4 of our party have now made it to a ridge across from Krea. But then, oh man, are you ready for this? We get to play as Bayo Dur's Remote. Oh man, if you guys told me things got this spicy during this game, I would have played it as soon as possible. But yeah, so you remember when I was like, man, Goto attacked Beodur's remote for no reason. Well, it turns out that the remote's purpose was to get to the machine which turned Malachor V into this shithole that it is, then power it back up and fire it again to completely destroy the planet this time. Beodur was the one who engineered this machine known as the Mass Shadow Generator, and Goto caught wind that the remote's true purpose was to destroy Malachor V completely. Goto doesn't want this as there are plenty of Sith treasures on the planet which could be used to help stabilize the Republic. So he knocked out the little droid and reprogrammed it to listen to him after getting the Mass Shadow Generator going again. So quick thing to note here, and I'll mention this now because of what's about to happen. So Goto isn't actually a dude controlling the droid, he is the droid. He was programmed by the Republic to help think up a way to stabilize it. The problem was that it was impossible to stabilize the Republic the way that it currently was. It was built upon horribly shoddy infrastructure that was always destined to implode at some point or another. And this command broke Goto. So he went about stabilizing the Republic in his own way by becoming a crime lord and using the exchange to inadvertently help the Republic's economy. Along the way, he realized that any human would always see a droid as inferior. So he made up the image of the human Goto and projected it when meeting with others to influence them into taking him seriously. It's actually a really brilliant backstory that really ties together the rest of Goto's being, and likewise it moves him up to a slightly higher spot in the character rankings. So Goto is holding Beodur's remote hostage, when suddenly HK-47 shows up to take out Goto. Goto thinks that he has the upper hand by bringing around the HK-50 units without realizing that 47 has reprogrammed them. This is a very fitting scene for the crime lord's end. I enjoyed the conclusion of both HK's free will being displayed as well as Goto's downfall. So we pan back to the four who are near Kreia, who have decided to take her out somehow. They plotted while across from her for a while before coming up with the absolutely genius idea of fighting her one at a time. Fucking really?
Come, child, where you walk, it is not far from battle, slaughter, and the blood of your sisters.
Yeah, it goes about as well as you'd expect. True to his character, Atton cheeses it out of there before running into Big Boy Scion and his massive gray frame. So if Atton goes down here, Scion sticks his hand through his neck and tells him he's going to make him beautiful. If Atton manages to defeat Scion, he limps away and there's a disjointed cutscene of an empty hallway which leads to the exact same cutscene regardless of the outcome. Now we've got yet another Kreia test, in which she tells Scion to pay me respects while seeing if I'll rescue my friends or just plow through straight to her. So I've got the option of something called the Crescent or the Proving Grounds. I imagine the latter is where my friends are, so I head to that. Lot of Sith here, man. Had to use Force Wave most of the time just to start out a room, but overall, pretty easy. I have to say, this battle music is probably some of my favorite music in the game though. It starts out the same as a lot of the other standard battle music, but it has this one part that just really slaps. I fucking love those drums. Anyways, we make our way through a bunch of empty cells before getting the option to free our friends or gas them for some reason. Like, if I didn't give a shit about my friends, couldn't I just go ahead without them? Was the gassing really necessary to prove that I'm a big bad evil boy? Whatever. So Mandalore, Myra, Visas, and Brianna are all here. Oh yeah, the handmaiden's name is Brianna. She renounced her namelessness and invoked her individuality when returning to Atris, and I forgot to say that before. I gotta say, it's kind of weird going from the mysterious moniker of Handmaiden to a very average name like Brianna. I mean shit, you got Atris, Kreia, Atton, Canderous, Visas, Vrook, Beodur, Vaklu, Vash. All of these names have little red squiggles under them in my script besides Visas. Then you've got fucking Brianna. Anyways, I free them all and they run into the room and none of them say anything besides Mandalore, who I tell to get my friends off this rock. I find it weird that I only talk to him, especially given that I've used Brianna and Visas way more throughout the game. Hell, I've used Myra more too. And I think their reputations are all way higher than his. So the only people missing from my squad are HK-47 and Beodur, who are definitely outside, Goto, who's dead, T3, which I have no idea about, and Atton, who's on the loose somewhere. So I head further in and find Scion, who... I don't know what treat the exile with respect means, but he respectfully tells me that he's going to kill me. I still don't understand why he's joined Kreia, but whatever.
You seek to erode my will. You will not succeed.
So this whole fight is a complete clone of the Bastila fight during the first game, except instead of drawing power from the Starforge, this guy just can't die as long as he embraces the dark side energy from the planet.
Now you realize the true power of the dark side. You're strong. You will not pass.
So let's talk about what Kreia's end goal is. I've probably touched on it a little bit, but I don't think that I've fully explained what it is that she's after. For reasons unknown, Kreia hates the Force. She loathes it, she wants it gone. She wants every Force user severed from it, and the whole thing just done with. She hates those who use it and rely on it as a crutch to make themselves powerful. And she hates that she has such a reliance on it herself. When she found you, she realized that you were able to cut yourself off from the Force, which is something that she sought to make use of to permanently end the Force. Extrapolating from this probably explains what happened with her former apprentices, Scion and Nihilus. When trying to teach her apprentices that the Force shouldn't be what defines them, each of them twisted that message in their own way, with Nihilus becoming an inhuman shell who uses his power to feed on other Force users, and Scion becoming his own monster by using the Force to essentially make himself immortal. What I don't get is why Nihilus was deemed a failure, seeing as he was devouring the Force at an alarming rate. I guess he rejected his humanity for it, but it seems like a fair trade-off to a degree. Scion, on the other hand, is despised by Kreia, as the exile explains to him during the fight. The fact that he relies so heavily on it, that it defines who he is, it's the very thing that Kreia hates about Force users. It's why she referred to him as a failure of an apprentice multiple times. Well, eventually I convinced Scion to give up on the Force, since it was making Kreia hold such a strong disdain for him. And that basically means that I talked him into killing himself, which is actually the method of assassination which HK-47 suggests when talking to him about Scion. Alright, it's final answer time, I think. Walking into the chamber brings me face to face with Darth Treya. She explains that there must always be a betrayer in the galaxy, especially in the times to come, which is very cryptic. Good start. She also elaborates that she never really manipulated Atris so much as guided her down a path that she was already headed down, which is manipulation, just not on a grand level. She explains that Atris loved me because I was the champion that she could never be, that I had the willpower that she would never have. But the biggest thing that I absolutely love about this dialogue with Darth Treya is just how great it is at answering all of my questions. Because as soon as I wrote down that she chose the exile because he severed ties with the Force, I thought to myself, well, what about the other people who were forcibly cut off? What about people who just choose to stop using the Force? And she answers just that. She explains that even when those events happen, the Force still unconsciously remains bound to those people. Most importantly though, Darth Treya explains that she hates the Force because of its invisible will. The way that it guides every single event and slowly manipulates the universe into a state of balance no matter what happens, even if it means the deaths of millions. The Force will always balance the scales to achieve said balance. That's probably the most human perspective I've seen for wanting to do something that so many would regard as horrible. I mean, Jesus. I've never thought about the Force this way until this game. I mean, sure, I've made a few jokes about it being a magic plot hole filler, because that tends to be how it's used in writing. Every event that's super coincidental, that seems like it's got a 1 in a billion chance of happening, is always attributed to the Force. But instead of leaning into that to explain all of the silly plot devices, Obsidian took that concept and turned it on its head, creating a villain who hates the idea that these coincidental things keep happening because the Force is a willful entity which demands balance. I love this. I honest to God love this point. And shit, after all this time of me sitting here and going, man, why is Kreia such an asshole to me about everything? I finally get it. Her motivations are crystal clear, and ironically her gray nature the entire game shows itself here more than ever. I don't see her as a hero or a villain. I just see her as someone with the power to do something that she's been trying to do this whole time. I guess if I had to assign a title to her, it would almost be a tragic villain. But honestly, she's probably done more to hurt the Sith than she has the Jedi. She doesn't want all life to end, to see the galaxy destroyed, or whatever else dumb bullshit thing that the Sith always seem to want solely because, wahaha, we're evil. She wanted the Sith dead. She wanted Atris to be taken care of before she could ever go down the road of becoming a Sith Lord, to create the same exact kind of Sith order which Kreia created before eventually being betrayed by her students. She wanted her former students dead before they could consume the galaxy. And the most evil thing that she wanted was to see the Jedi dead as well, seeing as the Jedi staunchly believe that the death of the Force means the whole galaxy dies. As Revan's teacher and Jedi Master, she never blamed him for his decision-making, and always stood by the choices that he made. She knew that he saw the pacifism of the Order being a gigantic weakness. He was never after the death of the Republic. It was always about tearing down the Order and walking the dark side so that he could selflessly sacrifice his standing in the galaxy and continue walking down his own path against whatever he felt was a true threat to the galaxy. Kreia was blamed for Revan betraying the Order and was cast out of it by them, where she turned to the dark side for knowledge. She was once again betrayed by her students, which sent her down the road of hating the Force. It's a brilliant example of the Jedi being hasty to judge and casting someone out and then paying for it, and the Sith being the self-cannibalizing force of evil that it's always been. But moreover, it brings us back to what Kreia said to the Council before killing them, that they refused to see the truth despite her presenting it to them. The Council blamed Kreia for being Revan's master, for failing to teach him properly. The reality is that the Jedi Code was flawed, and Kreia knew it. She knew that the things that they taught would only breed lack of action and stagnancy, that any idea against what they preach was heretical dark side talk. Because if Kreia could find the exile, train him into coming as far as he did while still being a part of the light side and rescuing his former masters, then how could she have been wrong in teaching Revan before? And yet the Council refuses to reflect inward, to admit their faults to the very end, instead choosing to continue to cast blame on the exile for ordering the mass shadow generator to be fired by Bao-Dur and creating wounds within the Force that existed within Nihilus, Scion, and the exile himself. Darth Treya chose the exile because she realized that he was the only one who could completely and utterly cut himself off from the Force willingly, and sees that as an opportunity to somehow end the Force completely. God, that's awesome. It's like Obsidian went, man, I sure do enjoy me some Star Wars, but I really dislike all of the stupid bullshit that happens because the Force. What if we just made a game that argues against everything we dislike about the franchise? It truly is a beautiful thing, because I honestly agree with this stance. So much of Star Wars is riddled with convenience and black and white decision making, and it makes so much of it hard to relate to for me. But Kreia is the antithesis of that idea, the counterpoint. And KOTOR 2 is the vessel which delivers the idea that Star Wars doesn't need to be good guys versus bad guys, where the good are wholly pure, and the bad are evil slave masters. And the fact that the Force always has some will of its own is something that's only ever vaguely referred to in platitudes that seem to only serve to bridge the gaps in storytelling. These ideas are things that I've personally believed and have taken issue with for a long time. And it turns out that a game made a little over 16 years ago already explored these ideas. Even striking Darth Treya down doesn't give you the whole, no, my evil plans, you've ruined them. We fight, I try to spare her, and she squeezes out a few extra lightsabers for the final phase, and then that's it. She's content, satisfied to know that she's guided you to becoming stronger, to have the power to continue to exist as a wound in the Force, to make your own decisions no matter what they may be. And that was the main point here. Sure, she would like it if you followed in Revan's footsteps, but she's fine if you don't, because you've become strong enough to survive and work against the Force no matter what you do. But before that, Kreia is able to use her powers one last time to read into the future, which is a nice touch. She explains that Telos and Dantooine will persevere on and eventually become hospitable again, that Onderon will fare well under the reign of Queen Talia, while continuing to serve under the Republic, that Nar Shaddaa will exist as always, though with more hope than before, that Korriban will be Korriban, that the Republic will collapse slowly over several millennia. She explains how everyone will live their lives, stating that Myra will give up hunting and live life as best as she can while helping others and missing you, That Mandalore will continue to follow Revan and fight many more battles while his people die out slowly over the next millennia alongside the Republic. That Visas will return to her homeworld to gain a clarity that she hadn't before, but ultimately Kreia has no idea what will become of her. That Brianna will give up fighting and become a historian in Atris's place, teaching future Jedi that the exile gave up the Force and became stronger for it. Kreia has no idea what will become of Bao-Dur or the droids. But the most interesting thing that comes of all of this is her views on Revan. She explains that Revan left behind all of the machines and all that he loved, to go fight a war against the true Sith who lurk beyond the fringe of the galaxy. That he'll need more warriors to help him fight this battle, be they Jedi or Sith. And then that's it. I actually thought that I'd get a choice in the ending here, but I'm kinda glad that I didn't. I mean, I made the decisions that I made throughout the game to get to the stage that I'm at. To have it all be overwritten or altered because I chose between the red, green, or blue button in the end would be kind of silly. So the ending that we get is as such. Kreia dead, walk out with Atton make joke, ship fly away, planet explode, credits roll. It's actually super quick and kinda unexpected. But I also realized that when Kreia was sitting here and telling me about all of the things that would happen in the future, that it was kind of a substitute for an ending in which we see all of these things happening. Because Lord knows that Obsidian had to squeeze this one out to make it at the end of 2004. Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic 2. Jesus Christ, it's hard to sum up. I wrote 53 pages on this video. 53. And I tried to cut it back. But there's so many layers, so many things to talk about and cover and make sure that I get right. And even then, I'm sure that I missed a few things. But this game it's good, but a much different one than the first entry. Where the first entry took all of the things that make Star Wars what it is and accomplished a pretty fun adventure full of twists and turns, KOTOR 2 takes the universe and turns it upside down, explores it from different angles, and makes you question just how you would feel about a more morally gray Star Wars. Now that said, and this is going to be a pretty big idea to chuck in at the end of the video, but this game is nowhere near perfect. I'm not talking about how finished it is or the idea that it needs modding to be completed. I'm talking about a fundamental flaw with a lot of its design. The whole story pushes the idea that not everything is black and white, that choosing between black and white has a negative affliction one way or the other. Kreia is the example set throughout this. Your teacher, your guiding beacon of neutrality. Don't help this person, you're making them weaker. Don't be a dickhead Sith for no reason, you're not helping anyone like that. But there are several gameplay and storytelling decisions that desync with this idea throughout its entirety. For one, you can't earn a prestige class if you're not fully light or fully dark. So if I want to stick to Kreia's neutral teachings, I'm stunting my character's development, which is the opposite of what Kreia ultimately wants. She wants to see you as powerful as you can be so that you can survive and do what you need to do to just exist. But following her guidance verbatim causes you to remain gray and apathetic.
Apathy is death.
But more importantly, it causes you to be physically weaker. But the biggest thing to me is that for as much as this game takes the message of light side bad and flawed because of this thing, and dark side bad and flawed because of this thing, it really never gives you any opportunity to exercise the morally gray philosophy. Let's go in order. Telos? Good guy hippies, not a bad bone in them. Bad guy megacorporation, only cares about money. Nar Shaddaa? Evil exchange boss and thugs keeping down the good refugees just trying to survive. Dantooine? Government structure just trying to get the planet back on its feet versus exchange-hired mercenaries. Onderon? Come on, dude. I'd honestly argue that Manon in the first game is the most morally gray quest chain in the series, despite KOTOR 1 being one of the most good versus evil storylines in video games. And most of the time, if you try to uphold Kreia's teachings, it's a very, very thin line in which you're not going to get a lecture at some point or another. Don't get me wrong, I loved a lot of the story, but much of its quest structure is super brittle when it comes to supporting its main points. And this game easily has the slowest and worst introduction to a video game that I've ever had the displeasure of playing. But overall, I had a lot of fun exploring the ideas that Obsidian brought to the table. I can easily see the reason why some would not enjoy it as much as the first game. And I can obviously see why someone would, as I'm in the latter camp. There are some fantastic ideas at play here, with an amazing supporting cast that really helps you to feel a connection to each and every party member. It's been a long time since I've felt this sensation when a plot is said and done, one that makes me want to know what happened with a lot of the key players. I don't know if KOTOR 3 will ever be a thing. There are rumors swirling about it, especially with EA no longer being the de facto creator of Star Wars games. It's tough though, because I'm unsure if there are many who would be able to carry the franchise's legacy into this generation of gaming. But you never know. Thanks for watching. I don't want a Star Wars anymore. It was good, but anyways, I got married. That's why this whole thing took longer than I thought it would. But yeah, hopefully it was worth the wait. I appreciate the patience though, and know that the next one should go quicker. Until then, I've got shirts with logos and happiness printed onto them. Look at how happy these fuckers are. I've also got, you know what gamer subs are? It's like energy drink powder you can mix with water to form energy drinks. I like them. I think they're good. Anyways, you can order a free sample of them with free shipping using my code SALT. Also, you can buy them, which does help me out. But you don't gotta. I've got a Twitch where I stream Monday, Tuesday, and Friday around the same times. I've got a Twitter where I post a thing or two at random times. I've got a Discord where people talk all of the time. And I've got a Patreon. And that's it. Have a good one.